As the sun's rays pierced through the window, heralding the dawn of a new day, Thorian roused from his modest bed. His eyes roved over the minimalist decor of the room. A small desk, a humble nightstand, and a tiny chair comprised the sparse adornments. It was a considerable upgrade from the dank cave floor he was used to sleeping on, yet it paled in comparison to the opulence he had enjoyed in his past life. Ready for a new day, Thorian slipped into his verdant robe and stepped outside. To his surprise, the village was a hive of activity, thrumming with monsters bustling about their business. Some hastened towards the village hall, eager to complete their quests, while others ventured to the guilds, ready to exchange their hard-earned arcane coins for new skills. His attention was caught by a few evolved creatures he hadn't previously encountered. The once stocky and short orcs had transformed into towering hulks, their faces marked by battle scars and enhanced by prominent, powerful jaws. Their primal and formidable presence was a testament to their newly acquired powers. Vivax's group should have also evolved, Thorian noted with a smile. That changes our plans a little bit. While Thorian surrendered to the comforting embrace of a deep sleep, his mind tirelessly continued to churn in the background. It brewed a concoction of ideas and sifted through memories of old strategies. One such strategy pertained to the gilded spike-tail and the challenge of penetrating its armored hide without resorting to the perilous and high-risk combination skills he had to use. How could I have forgotten such a simple trick? Thorian chided himself for his momentary lapse, but swiftly dismissed it. With the weight of countless concerns on his mind, some inefficiencies were inevitable. Armed with a fresh strategy, Thorian traversed the village to gather his most trusted deputies. They convened in the meeting room on the second floor of the village hall. Nox, Ventus, Furlan, Saxum, Vigil, Lapis, Vavix, and Zogther were all present. "Thank you for joining me at this early hour," Thorian began, his voice imbued with a quiet gravitas. "I've called you here to discuss our strategy for the day. Once I have presented my plan, I invite you all to share any concerns or suggestions you might have, so that we can deliberate on them together." Once he saw nods of assent from the gathered group, Thorian proceeded. "I observe that our new recruits are acclimating well to their environment. Can anyone report on their progress?" "Pretty good," Furlan replied. "They've reached approximately level 9 in both species and class." "Same on my end," Lapis chimed in. Seeing a wave of agreement ripple through the group, Thorian reciprocated their nods. "That is commendable progress. They should be on the verge of evolution." Pausing to draw in a deep breath, he then laid out his proposal. "Yesterday, we discussed dividing our forces into 2 platoons for the dungeon expedition. I believe now is the opportune moment to select the leaders for these groups." Every gaze remained fixed on Thorian as he articulated his plan. The Moon Kobold, in particular, couldn't suppress a wide grin. "Lapis, Vivax, Saxum, I entrust you with the leadership of the first platoon. This group will be divided into 3 units, with each of you overseeing one," Thorian commanded. "It is an honor, my king," Saxum responded, inclining his head in a modest bow. "We appreciate your trust, Thorian," Lapis added, gratitude resonating in his voice. Thorian acknowledged their words with a nod, then his gaze drifted to the remaining trio. "Furlan, Nox, Zogther, I assign you the command of the second platoon. Your roles will mirror those of the first platoon's leaders." "That's just what I wanted to hear, Thorian." Furlan's words echoed with unbridled enthusiasm. "How large will these platoons be? You mentioned about 50 yesterday." "I underestimated the influx of new combatants from the latest recruit batch," Thorian admitted, shaking his head. "After tallying all 4 groups, we have a total of 162 fighters. Each platoon will therefore consist of 81 members, with each of you leading a team of 27. "We appreciate this opportunity, my lord," Zogther said, bowing slightly. "There's no need for thanks," Thorian dismissed, shaking his head. "Now, for the second amendment to our plans. I want the first platoon to challenge the first layer without delay." "Why is that, my king?" Vigil inquired, taken aback. "I thought our strategy was to let the fresh recruits mature before we take on the dungeon." I am confident they can conquer it with ease, as long as each team has an evolved kobold, Thorian assured them. Their considerable growth in strength already serves as a reliable self-defense. This strategy will also maximize efficiency, as the rookies can gain an immense amount of experience from the dungeon and edge closer to evolution. Once they evolve, tackling the second layer could become feasible. Isn't that too hard, King? Ventus interjected. The other monsters are one thing, but that guardian was really hard to deal with. Its armor is so tough we had to combine all three of our skills to kill it. If that's the issue, I believe we have a solution at hand, Zogther chimed in. Post-evolution, we've acquired a new skill called Lethal Strike. It lets us bypass armor, akin to the treachery. That's excellent news, Thorian responded, a grin spreading across his face as the rest of the kobolds looked at the high orc in admiration. Groups with high orcs will have that edge, but those without them aren't bereft of strategies. Reflecting on our previous encounters, I devised a reliable method to breach the armor. What might that be, my king? Vigil inquired, his interest piqued. You'll need a fireball and a waterball spell. Repeatedly strike the same spot with both spells. The resulting shock from the rapid temperature change will cause the armor to fracture. Defeating it then wouldn't be as challenging. There was a beat of silence following Thorian's explanation. Those who had accompanied him on the dungeon expedition seemed particularly stunned. Ventus arched an eyebrow in surprise and curiosity, while Saxa murmured, "We had so much trouble against it, yet the solution was so simple." Opting not to linger on this revelation, Thorian pressed on. Instruct your magi to spend their arcane coins on these two spells. They will prove crucial in future engagements. Pausing to draw a deep breath, Thorian then issued his direct orders. Now, I want you to head to the gates and divide all the units in half to form the two platoons. Then split these platoons into 3 groups, each under the command of one leader. With that final directive, the meeting was adjourned. The 6 leaders dispersed, heading towards the gates to initiate the formation of the 2 platoons, leaving Thorian, Ventus, and Vigil behind. It's time for us to embark on our own tasks, Thorian remarked with a smile. Let's start our exploration. The trio exited the village, setting out to explore the outskirts. Guided by Thorian, they navigated confidently through the covert threats of the forest, unperturbed by its sneaky and devious dwellers lying in wait. One fireball or a command from Thorian to unleash a gale slash would be all they needed to neutralize most obstacles. As they journeyed onward, Ventus couldn't help voicing his thoughts. I should have bought the fireball skill myself. Can you imagine the power if I could do that combo alone? I'd be invincible. Right now, you wouldn't be able to, Thorian countered, shaking his head. Let me demonstrate. Thorian extended his arm toward a clearing in the forest. First, he conjured his wind gust and launched the spell. Without missing a beat, he began chanting his fireball incantation, and flames ignited in front of his palm. He launched the fire spell in the same trajectory as the first, but by the time it had covered half the distance, the wind gust had already struck the trees and dispersed. The fireball arrived in its wake, setting a tree ablaze. After summoning a water ball to douse the fire, Thorian turned back to Ventus to explain, at our current skill level, we can't cast spells rapidly enough to merge them solo. We would need to cast them almost simultaneously to achieve that effect. Your explanations are always so enlightening, Vigil chuckled. Meanwhile, Ventus was rubbing his chin and furrowing his brow in thought. After a moment's pause, he raised his gaze to Thorian and posed a question that seemed to have been on his mind. King, I'm sure everyone has wanted to ask you this, but how do you know so many things? King, I'm sure everyone has wanted to ask you this, but how do you know so many things? The moment Ventus uttered those words, even Vigil ceased his actions, turning to listen with an intensity that was rarely seen. All eyes were on Thorian searching for an answer. Well, it's not like I didn't expect this question. Drawing a deep breath, Thorian locked eyes with Ventus and responded, if that's what you desire, then so be it. At his words, the air of anticipation around Ventus and Vigil heightened, their eagerness for an answer unmistakable. Thorian indulged in the suspense, leisurely cracking his neck before finally offering his revelation. It was revealed to me in a dream. The room fell into a momentary hush before Ventus, disoriented by the unexpected reply, cocked his head to the side. "Hold on, King, I'm lost. What exactly was revealed to you in this dream?" "It felt as though I had lived an entire lifetime," Thorian articulated, his companions hanging on every word. "That dream was both lengthy and fleeting. I can't recall all the events and the details, yet the insights I remember are tangible." "It must be Ulvaski's blessing," Vigil hypothesized, connecting the dots. "I recall the elders speaking of such divine revelations too." "Ulvaski?" Thorian raised an eyebrow. "Oh, the wolf god. That makes sense now," Ventus exclaimed, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "That means you have gotten God's favor." "That is so amazing, King." "I can't say for certain if it's him, but that's how it occurred," Thorian conceded with a shrug before setting the group back in motion. "That also explains your change, my king," the priest observed sagely. "Once we came to this world, it's as if you have become a completely different person." Thorian took a moment to fully absorb the weight of Vigil's words. "So like I thought, this was the body of a different being before. I wonder where they are now. What was I like before?" Thorian queried, intrigued by the personality of his body's previous inhabitant. "You didn't talk much usually," Ventus expounded, his face reflecting his puzzlement. "Now that you mention it, you really did change a lot, King." "Who wouldn't change after getting Ulvaski's blessing?" Vigil interjected with a chuckle. "I know I certainly would." As his companions bantered about his shift in character, Thorian remained quiet. He merely smiled, amused by their ability to concoct a narrative more convincing than anything he could have fabricated. The trio of kobolds persisted on their journey, with the other two regaling stories of their old world. Thorian merely listened, offering no input. Their small party, a splinter faction of the tribe, roamed the vast lands under the leadership of Forlun. In their desolate homeland, the gods had chosen them to venture into this new world. With little instruction beyond, humans are the enemy, and the notion that they could evolve into superior beings, they had been flung into a dimensional portal and dispatched to this unfamiliar territory. As the hours rolled by, their journey took them further from their home village. Simultaneously chatting and hunting, Thorian limited his skill use to the two basic abilities he had yet to fully master. His fireball skill, combined with Ventus's wind gust, would only be used when they faced overwhelming odds necessitating mass destruction. After about an hour and a half, Thorian finally noticed a sign of what they were searching for. His ears pricked up at the sound of distant howling. "Those are dire wolves," he deduced, sharing a significant glance with his comrades. Acknowledging his conclusion, the trio sprinted toward the howling, their supernatural speed blurring the trees as they shot past. Shortly, the dense forest gave way to a large clearing. "Wow!" Ventus's succinct remark embodied the team's shared awe as they surveyed the gigantic pack of oversized wolves before them. Each beast was twice the size of an average wolf. Yet, the denizens of these lands were far from impressed by their visitors. 5 of the dire wolves rose, their eyes burning with threat as they growled menacingly at Thorian's group. Any second, they could launch themselves at the intruders, primed for the kill. "We did not come here to fight," Thorian asserted, stepping forward. "Take me to your leader." His words, however, were met with stony indifference. The moment Thorian finished speaking, the group of 5 lunged toward them, exuding lethal intent. Ventus was swift to unleash his wind gust spell, which Thorian mirrored with his own. However, the gust of wind did nothing to halt the beast's charge, the oversized wolves merely shaking off its effects. Upon seeing their magic ineffective, Thorian clicked his tongue in frustration. Left with no other option, he conjured a rock bullet and hurled it toward the leading dire wolf's front leg. With a sharp yelp, the beast lost its footing and tumbled to the ground, causing the wolves behind it to fall in a domino effect. Witnessing this turn of events, the remaining dire wolves, a sea of furry bodies, rose to their feet, their gaze sharp and alert. Thorian, undeterred, made another attempt to diffuse the tension. "We did not come here to fight." Please do not compel us to do so. Lead me to your leader. The dire wolf seemed set to dismiss Thorian's words again when a creature, large as a carriage, made its way through the pack, parting them as if it were dividing the Red Sea. I am the king of the dire wolves, the massive beast intoned solemnly. What do you wish to discuss with me? Unfazed and devoid of any hesitation, Thorian stared back at the colossal dire wolf king, stating his proposition. I am here to establish a pact with you and your pack, a pact of mutual protection. The king let out a sound, a seemingly amused chortle that resonated more as a fearsome growl. What value could such a pact hold when you are so weak? Weak? Ventus advanced with deliberate, heavy steps. Let me show you who the weak one is. Halt, Thorian intervened, restraining the winged magus with an upheld hand. There is no purpose in fighting now. Having voiced his stance, Thorian steadily approached the dire wolf king, all the while sweeping his gaze over the clearing. The pack of dire wolves was vast. He estimated more than 50 members in their midst. Yet, many bore significant wounds and scars marring their bodies. Some were even handicapped, reduced to functioning on 3 legs. We are not weak, but strength is not the only thing we offer, Thorian began in a subdued tone, gradually gathering intensity and commanding the clearing with his words. Those among you who are wounded, we have priests who can heal you. With their spells, you'll be restored to your prime condition. Those who are handicapped, we can assist you in slaying as many monsters as you need to evolve. You will emerge a superior entity, a complete being free of defects or injuries. His gaze locked onto the Wolf King's, unyielding and firm. With me, you won't have to fear injuries. You'll have the freedom to fight to your heart's content. The clearing fell silent as Thorian concluded his speech, all eyes riveted on his figure. The sight was almost comical, Thorian standing tall and unafraid before the enormous Wolf King. Even the king himself seemed taken aback, his eyebrows lifting in surprise. Bold claims coming from you, the Wolf King growled. Show me this magic of which you speak, this healing power for my kin. If even a single word you've spoken proves false, your head will join the others. The Wolf King stepped aside, revealing a grisly scene. The clearing was strewn with the carcasses of various beasts and monsters. Some had already served as meals for the pack, leaving only bones behind, while others had been left to decay. Thorian's expression remained unfazed at the sight. He simply met the gaze of the Wolf King and said, I ask for your word as a king, that if I fulfill my promise, you will form a pact with me. Insolent creature, the giant wolf rumbled, his tone begrudging. Very well, if you deliver on your promise, I will enter your pact. Thorian responded with a smile, turning his gaze back to the priest. Vigil's expression was a blend of awe and surprise. Show them what you can do, Vigil. At Thorian's command, Vigil advanced, with Ventus shadowing him closely. Although the priest demonstrated a slight hesitancy, the winged magus moved nonchalantly, displaying no fear of the pack of giant wolves who would readily liberate his flesh from the confine of his bones. As Vigil neared one of the injured wolves, it returned his approach with a fearsome stare and an eerie growl. Let him work his magic, commanded the Wolf King, surprising the other wolves. I want to see for myself whether this is true or merely the last desperate fabrication of a dying man. The wolves reluctantly complied, permitting Vigil to draw near. With a brief incantation, he cast his moon's healing spell. Moonlight materialized in his palm before engulfing the injured wolf's body. The beast yelped in surprise as the divine energy set to work, healing its gaping wound. Flesh wove itself together, concealing the exposed bone, followed by a new layer of hide and fur to camouflage any scarring. Thorian glanced at the king of the direwolves, who was staring in disbelief at the spectacle Vigil was performing. Is this magic? He murmured, awestruck. Incredible. Proceed to the next one, Thorian commanded. And so, Vigil continued healing the injured direwolves, one after the other. Over time, the skepticism and suspicion in the king's voice gradually transformed into surprise and admiration. Before long, Vigil had tended to all the visible wounded, leaving only the crippled. There is one more wolf I wish you to heal, the king of the wolves spoke gravely, his tone devoid of its former arrogance. It's my son. Thorian nodded in acknowledgement, and the king led them beyond the clearing. There, next to a tree, lay a gargantuan wolf. His size was eclipsed only by the king himself, his body worn and fatigued. "He has been in this state the whole night," the dire wolf king voiced with palpable pain. "It feels as though I'm watching my son slowly fade away right in front of me." Without missing a beat, Vigil cast his spell once more. But as the moonlight dissipated from the wolf's body, its condition remained unchanged. "Is he incurable?" the king questioned, his voice a blend of fury and despair. "Hold on a moment." Thorian furrowed his brows, meticulously examining the beast. "I think I understand what's wrong with him." With a glimmer of hope reignited, the king urged, "Please, save my son, and I promise on my name I'll form the pact with you." Thorian nodded, then approached the languishing creature. Its eyes were half open, but it lacked the energy to respond or react. It simply lay there, listless. Witnessing the wolf in this condition, Thorian grimaced. "It's most likely that parasite." Thorian then laid his hand on the beast's body, methodically examining every inch of the dire wolf. He ensured he didn't overlook any part of the beast's form. As his fingers sifted through the wolf's hide, Thorian could feel the skeletal structure beneath. The creature had lost so much muscle and fat in the short time it had been suffering, he could palpate the entirety of its ribcage. All eyes were fixed on Thorian as he performed his examination. While Ventus and Vigil watched with interest, the king was utterly absorbed by Thorian's actions. A swirl of emotions was evident in the king's eyes. On one hand, he feared Thorian might inflict harm upon his son. On the other, he harbored hope that Thorian would uncover the source of the malady plaguing his offspring. "Found it." Finally, Thorian reached under the wolf's belly and pulled sharply. The king was on the brink of launching into action, believing Thorian was causing his child harm, but a devilish screech froze him in his tracks. In Thorian's hand was a grotesque, small creature, its large mouth filled with a disarrayed set of teeth. Thorian cast the creature onto the ground before incinerating it with a fireball, silencing its screeches. "That was a vampiric leech," Thorian turned to explain. "It's a parasite that can only survive by draining the energy and vitality of its host. Your son was unfortunate to encounter it. Will he be okay now?" the king asked, his voice a combination of hope and fear. "He should recover quite quickly," Thorian nodded in reassurance. "He just needs plenty of nourishment and time to rest. He will return to his old self soon." A moment of silence followed as the king reflected, his eyes clouded with a myriad of emotions. After a few moments, he lifted his gaze to Thorian and stated, "Approach me. Let us solidify this pact." Thorian complied, stepping toward the king. As he drew closer, the colossal wolf lifted its paw, puncturing it with a sharp fang. Blood began to trickle down its leg. "We must exchange blood," the king clarified. "That's the only way we can form a genuine soul pact. A bond that cannot be broken until death." "Let's proceed," Thorian agreed, biting his thumb. Blood trickled down his hand, which he pressed against the enormous beast's paw. A blinding light of myriad colors forced Thorian to shield his eyes. When he reopened them, the king of the dire wolves remained before him, seemingly unchanged. Yet Thorian felt a new sensation deep within his heart, both a confining shackle and a comforting connection. "You are not as weak as I assumed," the king's words echoed in Thorian's mind. Taken aback momentarily, Thorian quickly regained his composure. Leveraging his familiarity with a similar skill, he responded in kind. "You will have access to this type of power too." The Wolf King grinned in response, asking, "What is your name?" "Thorian, Lord of Wolvendale," he answered out loud this time. The king nodded before reciprocating, "I am Harold, King of the Dire Wolves." Thorian's lips curled into a subtle smile. "Well then, shall we head to your new home?" Harold gave a nod of agreement. "I am interested to see what kind of place you have established for yourself." "Hopefully it would be to your satisfaction," Thorian returned with a warm grin. Harold bellowed a chilling laugh before pivoting towards his kin. "My children, from this day forward, we shall be forever bonded with Thorian and his tribe. We will defend them as they will us, echoing through the generations to come." The air reverberated with the unified howl of 50 dire wolves, lending weight to their monarch's decree. His words bore the power of an unchallengeable celestial edict. Chuckling at the spectacle, Thorian glanced back at his companions, Ventus and Vigil, who stood frozen in awe. Well, it seems we should put on a show of our own. The small contingent intermingled with their newfound allies, with both Ventus and Vigil sealing their own soul pacts with chosen dire wolves. The group decided to linger until Harold's son regained enough strength to walk. After half an hour, the Wolf Prince's pallor had entirely transformed, hinting at a resurgence of vitality. He was still far from chasing game through the forest, but could at least keep pace with the group. Mounted atop Harold, Thorian guided the united band towards Wolvendale, threading their way through the dense forest. As they navigated the labyrinth of trees, Thorian decided to evaluate the development of his two abilities. Rock Bullet. Description: you create a barrage of rocks that fly toward your enemies, pummeling them and leaving them vulnerable. Proficiency 53.2%. Wind Gust. Description: you summon a powerful gust of wind that can knock your enemies off balance, extinguish fires, and enhance your speed and agility. Proficiency 48.7%. Thorian's smile broadened at the tangible progress he'd made. He was inching ever closer to achieving his coveted class advancement. But as his gaze roamed across his display, another detail seized his attention. Soulbound companion Harold, Alpha Direwolf. A concentrated stare at this section of the interface summoned another panel, revealing Harold's statistics. Status panel. Race Alpha Direwolf. Level 1235, EXP 234/1900. Lifespan 50 years. Stats: Strength 72. Agility 98. Constitution 67. Mana 23. Skills: Feral Leadership, passive. Howl of the Lord, active. Wind Leap, active. Dire Rend, active. Bestial State, active. The amount of stat points is very high, and their distribution is also good. His skills are top-notch. Thorian offered a nod of approval before refocusing his attention on the surrounding forest. Their party's sheer size deterred most creatures from daring to obstruct their path. The exceptions were evolved species, such as Thrycreans and Thundermashers, who braved the risk. Nevertheless, Thorian provided support with his Wind Gust and Rock Bullet skills, while the Direwolf pack efficiently dealt with these threats. As they continued their journey, a distant rustle of underbrush echoed towards them. The clamor was reminiscent of a stampeding horde of monsters. Thorian tensed, preparing for the impending onslaught. He quietly hoped the incoming creatures were of a more manageable variety. Even their sizable group would struggle to stave off a swarm of rolling shelltrotters. What emerged from the dense forest, however, was far beyond Thorian's wildest predictions. A tall bipedal creature, its white fur contrasted starkly against the golden armor encasing its chest, burst forth. Forlun. Thorian's voice faltered, his heart tightening with the emergence of unforeseen scenarios. What are you doing here? Wolvendale Village. Western Gate. Some time ago, Nox found himself perched atop the newly reinforced wall. Its broadened expanse now allowed not only for comfortable seating, but also for easy conversation. His unit, comprised of 27 varied kobolds and cobloids, was scattered around him. Some of his comrades sat adjacent to him on the wall, others manned the watchtower, and a handful succumbed to sleep on the secure ground within the village boundaries. One of the cobloids seated next to Ifrit stifled a yawn before remarking, "Man, I'm so tired." "How long did we get to sleep? 2 hours? 3 hours? Consider yourself fortunate," retorted Ifrit, a hint of resentment in her tone. "We didn't get much sleep yesterday either. The fatigue is catching up to me." Inley, poised on the edge of the watchtower, let out a chuckle before remarking, "If anyone has the right to grumble, it's Nox. He's only got 6 hours of sleep in the last 3 days." "It's all right," Nox replied with a dismissive shake of his head. "I got less tired when I evolved, so that helped." "You're basically calling us little bitches now, aren't you?" Ifrit retorted, rolling her eyes. "We evolved too. It didn't help that much." It's not just about lack of sleep, a brown Kobloid interjected, clicking his tongue. It's just that monsters don't come around as often anymore. And why should they? Ifrit guffawed, her gaze sweeping over the morbid expanse of decaying corpses beyond the wall. Not even a dumb slug would see this and dare come. True, but our leveling speed has taken a hit, another Kobloid grumbled in response. Look at you complaining about monsters not wanting to kill you, Ifrit remarked, raising an eyebrow in amusement before chuckling. But you're right. It might be a good idea to just get rid of this trash. The smell is making me want to throw up at all time. As Ifrit and the Kobloids carried on with their playful banter and casual conversation, Nox observed them, a gentle smile gracing his features. He found their chatter enjoyable, though fatigue prevented him from participating. Suddenly, his ears pricked at the sound of a swooshing noise. Reacting instinctively, he lunged towards one of the Kobloids, his hand clutching the hilt of his axe. The recruit, a recent addition to their ranks, barely had time to register the Shadowstalker's swift charge before Nox bisected the oncoming projectile with a swift swing of his weapon. What in the seven hells? Ifrit exclaimed, taken aback by Nox's abrupt movement. Why did you do that? Even Inley shot him a puzzled glance, while the target Kobloid remained speechless, too stunned to utter a word. However, as Nox lifted his axe, a noticeable dent on its blade was revealed. Glancing down, he discovered the source of the disruption, a fist-sized rock, now split in two. Rock bullet? Nox questioned, an eyebrow arched in curiosity as the rest of the group gathered around him, intrigued by his actions. As they examined the shattered stone, Nox swiveled around to determine the origin of the unexpected attack. Humans. At Nox's utterance, the group's collective gaze followed his line of sight. Emerging from the cover of the trees, 2 squads of 10 humans appeared. Their attire was unassuming, similar to the clothes typically worn by village dwellers or workers. However, their recent warning shot clearly indicated they were anything but harmless. Finally, some action, Ifrit remarked, her knuckles cracking in anticipation. You guys were complaining about not leveling up fast enough? Well, here's a fresh batch of experience points delivered right to our gate. We must all thank Ulvaski for offering us such a delicious meal. I prefer offering my prayers after I eat, Inley remarked before launching himself off the watchtower. Hey, don't try to hog it all for yourself. Ifrit retorted and leapt off the wall, her action mirrored by the remaining Kobloids. Boss, you're not going to join? A silver-furred kobold assassin queried. Nox chuckled, shaking his head in response. Go ahead, enjoy yourselves. I will keep watch from here. As you wish, boss, the assassin promptly rejoined the group. As anticipated, the kobolds made quick work of the human invaders. The vast disparity in abilities and skill sets was glaringly evident. 5 humans were no match for the ferocity of either Ifrit or Inley. Unfazed by the Magi's barrage of fireballs, Ifrit would simply surge forward, incinerating her opponents with her own potent flames. Meanwhile, Inley demonstrated superior strength and vitality, a figure of unyielding resilience on the battlefield. Even the Kobloids held their own impressively. Employing their innate rock armor ability, they effectively thwarted the humans' attacks and retaliated with their own formidable skills. Their physical prowess and agility, enhanced by the substantial stat boosts from leveling up both their class and species, gave them a distinct advantage on the battlefield. Nox observed his unit's efficient dismantling of the 2 human squads with a sense of pride. However, as the last human warriors made their final stand, he detected an audible rustling from the surrounding forest. Emerging from the shadows of all the trees within his line of sight, a flurry of silhouettes began to materialize. Fall back. Nox's voice rang out across the field, his tone urgent. There are a lot of them. Too many. The din of the battlefield made his command barely perceptible. As the kobolds turned towards the Shadowstalker, waves of humans poured forth from the shelter of the trees, their numbers reaching into the hundreds. It resembled an army, one comprised of ordinary individuals whose eyes glowed with a wild, unhinged fervor. Spells representing all 4 elements hurtled towards Nox's unit by the dozen. The Kobloids bore the initial brunt of the attack, unable to evade the magical onslaught and forced to shield themselves with their comparatively weak rock armor. The Kobolds, however, managed to deflect the assault and orchestrated a strategic retreat. Observing that some of the Kobloids were on the verge of being left stranded, Nox sprang into action. With a single, swift stride, he plunged into the oncoming surge of humans. Their utterances were nothing but a baying shout of kill and unintelligible battle cries. Through a series of rapid, lethal strikes, Nox dispatched half a dozen adversaries before reaching the besieged Kobloids. Scooping 2 of them under his arms, he made a hasty retreat towards the village, scaling the formidable wall with a single, agile leap before setting the fresh recruits safely on their feet. Casting a backward glance, he noted the other kobolds assisting the newer members in their desperate escape. Regrettably, some had already fallen to the human onslaught and were beyond rescue. With a grunt of determination, Nox re-entered the fray, scooping up more of the retreating Kobloids. Carrying them proved faster than waiting for their clumsy attempts at running and inevitably futile efforts to scale the towering wall. Possessing otherworldly agility, which was further enhanced by his thorned cloak, Nox displayed speed superior to the other 2 assassins, even while carrying a Kobloid in his arms. This swift pace ensured that the haphazardly launched spells fell short, their sluggish trajectories failing to connect with him. After a few quick trips, all the surviving members of Nox's unit had safely retreated within the village confines. Thankfully, most of the humans lacked the requisite strength to scale the wall. Yet, Nox knew this respite was fleeting. Given time, their persistent bombardment of fireballs would inevitably breach the barrier. How the fuck are they so strong? Ifrit grunted. And why are there so many of them? It's like we kicked up an anthill. We need to run away fast, Nox commanded, his expression grave. Recalling Thorian's counsel during their meeting, he was acutely aware that this was a circumstance where retaliation would incur heavy losses, even under the best of conditions. Turning his focus to the 2 assassins, he issued new instructions. Go around the village and tell the other units we are being invaded. We need to escape into the forest and regroup with Thorian. Tell them all to go east. Are you out of your mind? Ifrit retorted, her expression a mixture of disbelief and shock. King left us here to protect the village, not to abandon it when the enemy comes. Ifrit, mind your language, Inley reprimanded sternly, his voice resonating with authority. Nox is our leader who our king appointed. You need to listen to his orders. There are too many humans, Nox explained. I saw so many of them. It's like they covered the forest. Just as he concluded his statement, a human hand appeared over the crest of the wall. One by one, individual humans began to scale the wall, appearing at various points. Simultaneously, the reverberating thuds and high-pitched screeching indicated that a breach was imminent. We need to move fast. With that directive from Nox, the group sprang into motion. The assassins diverged, one venturing north and the other south. The remaining members aimed for the furthest point from their current location, the eastern gate. As the unit, consisting of around 17 kobolds and kobloids, navigated through the village, their speed was limited by the slowest kobloids. Nox and the other kobolds couldn't expedite their movement by carrying them, given the disproportionate ratio of kobloids to kobolds, heavily weighted in favor of the former. Hearing the footfalls behind them, Nox stole a glance over his shoulder. A group of fleet-footed humans were hot on their trail, brandishing an assortment of weapons from swords to axes to daggers. No doubt, they were assassins. The fastest among them exhibited a speed that could rival the slowest kobolds, a commendable achievement for a human bereft of dual leveling abilities. Simultaneously, as Nox's gaze swept over the front of the village, he took in the sight of bewildered civilians going about their daily routines. There were expectant mothers, frail elders, and bemused children who hadn't even comprehended that their village was under siege. They're going to all die at this rate. Ifrit, take the civilians with you and keep running. Nox gritted his teeth and issued his command. His voice was noticeably grave, a stark departure from his usual playful manner. At this rate, they're going to catch up to us. I'm going to stop them for a bit and then regroup with you later. Don't stop or slow down more than you need to. You'll only make it harder for me. What the hell are you saying, Nox? Ifrit snarled, her ire apparent. If you're going to stay, I'm going to stay too. We either both live or we both die. Ifrit. Nox's voice thundered, taking the flame kobold aback. I am not going to die. But if we both stay, one of us definitely will. Nox, Inley's gaze bore into the Shadowstalker's eyes, his tone laden with fervor. Don't you dare croak on us. Who do you think I am? Nox retorted, a chuckle tinging his words before he pivoted. The squadron of assassins storming towards his group were perilously close to the trailing Kobloids. Just as one of the humans was about to plunge his blade into the back of a fellow Kobloid, Nox lunged at him with a speed bordering on spectral. The human's arm had barely stretched to deliver the fatal blow when Nox's axe claimed his neck. His weapon shrouded in a morbid, dark aura, the Shadowstalker made quick work of the assassin squad. With swift, lethal strokes, his adversaries were laid low, disemboweled and slain. Having dispatched the group, Nox straightened up to survey the advancing horde. The humans had already breached the wall and set large portions of it aflame. They swarmed into the village like a relentless tide of ants. Wherever Nox's gaze landed, it was met with dozens, if not hundreds, of frenzied faces. Yet, rather than perceive them as a threat, he saw them as a veritable feast. A feral grin spread across his features as he wiped his enemy's blood off his axe, readying himself for the onslaught to come. I'm sorry, Thorian. I might not leave you much to kill after I'm done. What are you doing here? Upon Thorian's query, the moon kobold stuttered, eyes wide with alarm. King. At the utterance of this title, a wave of kobolds and kobloids surged from the forest. However, the sight of Thorian's band and the pack of direwolves halted them abruptly. Thorian recognized many familiar faces among the kobolds, Bellifer, Kryman, and Kadar. The presence of these figures from his tribe only added to his growing bewilderment. What in the world are they doing here? Ventus chimed in from Thorian's left, perched regally atop his own direwolf. Meanwhile, Vigil maintained his silence. The atmosphere told him something was gravely amiss. Thorian's expression shifted from shock to an intense fury. He wrestled to keep his burgeoning rage under control. Who are these beings? Harold inquired telepathically, prepared to leap into action at any sign of danger. Are they foes? After a moment's hesitation, Thorian answered, no. They are my people. He then dismounted from Harold's back and strode toward the large group of kobolds and kobloids with a heavy determination. As his gaze swept over them, he recognized more and more familiar faces, many of them non-combatants. King! King! Kadar, tears streaming down his face, ran toward Thorian and fell to his knees. We're glad to have found you. Now even more disoriented by the unfolding events, Thorian surveyed the scene before demanding in a low, authoritative voice, "Can someone explain to me what in the seven hells is going on here?" A tense silence ensued. It was broken when Forloon stumbled forward, falling to one knee. It was my fault. I was the one responsible. The humans, there was a sea of them. I ordered an escape because I didn't believe we could win. Humans? How does that even make sense? Are your warriors so frail? Harold posed telepathically. How could mere humans overrun them, regardless of their numbers? I intend to understand that right now, Thorian declared. He scanned the assembled crowd until his gaze settled on Aqua, the water magus, who managed to maintain a composed demeanor amidst the chaos. Aqua, tell me exactly what happened. The blue kobold nodded somberly. We were guarding the wall when we heard a stampede from the forest. We thought it was just monsters at first, but they were human. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of them. They hurled all manners of spells at us, and the wall was breached from the countless fireballs thrown at it. Thousands? Are they William's men? But how do all of them have classes? As Thorian's eyebrows drew together in deep thought, the image of an elderly man and a young child flickered into his mind, triggering another surge of fury to sweep across his features. I should have killed them. Simultaneously, Aqua was expanding on his account, leaving the rest of the kobolds hanging on his every word, their breaths shallow. No matter how many humans we killed, they continued to pour in. The village was engulfed in flames, hindering our movements. The Magi continuously bombarded us with their spells, overpowering us through sheer number. Thorian took a moment to inhale deeply, steadying his turbulent emotions. Casting his gaze over the crowd, he realized that while there was a considerable number of kobolds present, a significant portion of the second platoon was still notably absent. "Where is Ogther and the orcs?" Thorian inquired as he felt his heart clenching. "Many kobolds and kobloids are absent too. Where are Inli and Ifrit?" "We split up," Furlun explained. "I talked with Zogther and it became clear it was better to split up so that they can't catch us. Ifrit, Inli, and many of the kobolds and kobloids ran with him." "This seems like a giant mess," Harold remarked. "Should we go and clean up your place of those roaches?" "We will," Thorian affirmed with a nod. "But there are some things we need to prepare first." Furlun, Thorian addressed the Moon Kobold. "I want you to select a few warriors and make your way to the dungeon. Lead the first platoon and meet up with us a few hundred meters east of the gate. You should be able to track us by our scent." "Right away, my king," Furlun agreed, eager to demonstrate his worth. He assembled a group of kobolds and set off towards the dungeon. Thorian then turned to the water magus. "Aqua, I need you to take a few troops with you and locate Zogther and his men. Rejoin us as soon as you find them." "Consider it done, my king," Aqua responded, giving a curt nod before springing into action. As Aqua was assembling his team and preparing to pursue Zogther, one of the assassins under the Shadowstalker's command stepped forward. "King, I'm sorry for interrupting you," he stammered, a conflicted expression etched on his face. "Speak," Thorian commanded succinctly. "Nox," the assassin exclaimed in a distressed tone. "Nox needs your help. He stayed behind to buy us time to escape, but he's now engaged with the entire army alone." Thorian's expression froze. The murmurs and groans of the surrounding kobolds receded into the background, transforming into indistinguishable white noise. As he conjured the image of his most loyal follower in his mind, an unrestrained fury ignited within the depths of his heart. "So they want to all die." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Wolvendale Village. At around the same time, the once vibrant village, filled with the bustling activities of the kobolds and kobloids, was now overflowing with humans. Some laid lifeless on the ground, but the majority were striding and running around, displaying no compassion or sympathy for the fallen. Many of the dwellings Thorian had painstakingly constructed using valuable wood units had been razed by the Magi's devastating flames. The wall was breached at multiple points, with large sections succumbing to the blaze. Some of the Magi were casting water balls in an attempt to subdue the ravenous fire. "Why are we doing this again?" The towering figure known as Rag posed his question to the woman dressed in vibrant green next to him. "Do you mean extinguishing the flames?" She returned his question with one of her own, an eyebrow arched in curiosity. Ragnar shook his head in negation. "No, I mean, why did we come here in the first place? I still don't understand this territory business. Wouldn't it have been better if we just rushed to the Ravenwood Palace and claimed it?" Nalia, the lady in green, chuckled at Ragnar's incessant questioning. "And then what? Assume control over a city of the dead?" Her gaze drifted over the men and women around them. Their primal instincts and barbarism were barely concealed beneath a fragile shroud of civility. These folks are a challenging lot to manage. They played their part well in breaking through the village walls and conquering it. It's only regrettable that the Lord was not present for us to eliminate. Ragnar's grin widened at Nalia's explanation. "Did you expect what we found here too? A village filled with monsters that are able to talk." Nalia remained silent for a beat. Her face was a mask of neutrality, but Ragnar could see through it. "Is this something you didn't predict?" He couldn't resist the urge to taunt her. "Now, that would be a first." "Well, nothing in my past experiences suggested such an outcome," Nalia conceded, her admission leaving Rag visibly taken aback. Even the lean figure walking beside them seemed startled. "Soren," Nalia addressed the slender man, "what's the situation with the guildmasters?" "They remain as uncooperative as ever," Soren revealed, a trace of dread in his voice. "Whenever someone enters their domain, they die a most terrifying death. So that speedy rat is still hiding, Ragnar clicked his tongue in disappointment. What a pity. I would have liked to crush him myself. Nalia, disregarding Ragnar's comment, nodded at Soren's report. That's to be expected. Without full control over this territory, they retain the right to tell us off. So, we need to kill the lord of this village to truly claim it? Ragnar queried, his eyes shining with manic glee. I wonder what he looks like? I hope he's a strong wolf, mighty enough to offer me a challenge. You have a one-track mind focused on combat and death, Soren rebuked, shaking his head in disapproval. You should aspire to be more civilized. Huh. You're quite funny, Ragnar responded, laughing raucously. Discussing civilization whilst we're surrounded by monsters. Even those among us are no different than beasts. As Ragnar voiced these words, he cast a surveying look at the thousands of men and women crowding the village. Their eyes glowed with a sinister red light, and their breaths sounded rough, like those of wounded animals. Just what did you do to them? Ragnar asked Nalia, his gaze a blend of apprehension and admiration. Just a slight enhancement, she responded nonchalantly. I simply helped them tap into their true nature. In return, they gained power they could never have dreamed of. It's only unfortunate that it's temporary. Following a moment of silence, Soren ventured to ask, temporary? What does that mean? Power doesn't come without a price, does it? Nalia replied, her smile enigmatic before it faded to an impassive mask. At this moment, their demise would serve me more than their survival. Nalia's statement caused both Soren and Ragnar to freeze, their expressions a mirror of shock. However, before they could voice their reactions, a band of men and women appeared, converging on their small gathering from all sides. These rowdy villagers, their eyes ablaze with wild fanaticism, were led by a man with fiery red hair. His stature was slender and seemingly unimposing, yet he radiated an authority rooted in an unsettling aura of dread. Nalia, there is something we need to talk with you about. He moved towards the woman in green with confident strides, his expression a grotesque dance of insanity. Why don't you have some rest and leave the rest of the matters to us? As Thorian led his party towards the besieged village, a storm of anticipation swelled within him, forcing him to wrestle with an instinctive urge to immediately plunge into the fray. Nox, just try to survive for as long as you can. I am coming. However, such impulsiveness was a path to ruin. It would be reckless to toss caution to the wind and leap headlong into the lion's den to rescue his ally. Such an act would merely result in a higher death toll amongst his own. So, with a measured calm, Thorian began to execute his strategy. His initial command was for as many kobolds as possible to establish soul bonds with the direwolves. 15 of them successfully became riders, the majority being warriors, with the exceptions of Aqua and a swift assassin, whom Thorian had dubbed Alacritas. If we charge head-on, our strength might suffice to secure victory, Thorian elaborated. But I don't desire a mere win. I want a flawless victory with as little of us dying. Even 1,000 of their lives do not equate to the value of a single one of ours. What should we do then, King? Ventus inquired, perched atop his immense direwolf. Do you have a plan in mind? We will lay an ambush, Thorian elucidated. Once we lure them into the forest, we can leverage our superior speed and the concealment of the trees for hit-and-run tactics. The terrain will deprive them of any defensive advantage. Your insight remains as profound as ever, Vigil remarked. But where shall we stage our ambush? We'll establish multiple ambush sites, Thorian expanded. Each of the 6 units from the 2 platoons will position themselves in a specific area of the forest. Isn't it better if we all stand together? Ventus asked, his brow furrowing. There is strength in number. No, that would be detrimental, Vigil countered. If we all cluster in the same area, they could simply hurl a barrage of fireballs in our general direction. We would be ensnared in a deadly inferno. While our king might survive, many would not. Indeed, Thorian agreed, nodding. Our dispersion is essential to make us less of a target. It plays into our nimbleness and adaptability. With a strategy formulated, Thorian waited for Forlun and Aqua to rally the rest of his troops. After half an hour, the orcs, along with the kobolds and kobloids of the first platoon, regrouped with them. According to the plan, Thorian strategically stationed each unit at various points within the forest. Some were positioned closer to the northern and southern gates, rather than the eastern gate where he resided. As for the citizens and the crippled dire wolves, Thorian stationed them farther back, away from the danger of the battlefield. With his warriors dispersed throughout the forest, waiting in ambush, Thorian rode Herald and ascended the hill, accompanied by Ventus and Aqua. From their elevated vantage point, he could see the village teeming with humans. Those camped on the pile of monster corpses outside alone numbered in the dozens. Amongst them were men and women of all ages. A woman with a usually gentle face was now armed with a blood-stained axe, a wild expression contorting her features. The level of barbarity on display, even from those who had witnessed their entire world collapse around them, was bewildering. "These are just normal citizens," Thorian raised an eyebrow. "I thought it would be William's men." Despite them being mere citizens, thoughts of mercy never grazed Thorian's mind. They had dared to show hostility and had slain his people. Such reckless individuals were destined only for death. "Shall we extend them a small greeting?" Thorian proposed to his companions, his voice barely above a whisper. Grasping his intention, Ventus flashed a grin. "If it's of the violent kind, I am all for it, King." The wind and water magi readied their most potent spells, while Thorian stood on the brink of the cliff. His gaze bore into the heart of his ravaged village. "My name is Thorian." His voice resonated like a thunderclap, arresting the attention of all humans near or upon the wall. "And I am the lord of this village." No sooner had his words echoed than Ventus and Aqua unleashed their spell. The triple jet stream struck first, claiming 3 lives instantaneously. The gale slash followed, leaving even greater havoc in its wake. The slicing winds tore through the crowd, cleaving limbs and rending flesh. The corpses of humans joined the pile of monsters below in a gruesome cascade. The clamor stirred by Thorian and his troops prompted an increasing number of humans to spill from the fractured wall. Some endeavored to direct their spells at the kobolds, but their reach failed to ascend to the cliff's summit. "Do it again," Thorian commanded, and the pair complied. With humans surging towards the wall like a horde of ants, their spells found a mark wherever they were cast. Yet, even as their comrades fell by the dozens at their side, the humans pressed on, a peculiar frenzy fueling their momentum. Even from a distance, Thorian could discern their chance of kill. After several more volleys of spells, the human force had advanced perilously close. Thorian pivoted, and together with the 3 kobolds, they sped down the hill on their dire wolves. Eyeing the humans rushing from their right beneath the cliff, Thorian glanced at Ventus. "Let's incinerate them." Understanding his intent, Ventus invoked his wind gust spell, unleashing it upon the approaching human throng. Thorian promptly followed with a fireball, fusing the 2 spells into a colossal wave of flames. As the fierce conflagration consumed the charging humans, a notification materialized before Thorian. "Corrupted soul extinguished. System check. Quest contribution accepted." Corrupted soul? Thorian's brow knitted together at the vaguely familiar term. He was aware that certain classes or monsters could corrupt souls under specific conditions, but neither of these possibilities seemed plausible at the moment. Such potent entities could not exist so early into the apocalypse. Wait, I recall hearing something of the sort. As thoughts raced through Thorian's mind, he recalled a forbidden quest, one that he had heard whispers about a decade ago. Did someone accept the Soul Reaver quest? But that happened in the capital. Thorian sensed that something was amiss, but he could not afford the luxury of deep contemplation at the moment. He had a war to win. As the trio reached the foot of the hill, the frenzied humans charged through the fiery onslaught and lunged towards them. The moment their gazes met, the human magi invoked their spells and hurled them towards the kobolds with unwavering resolve. Naturally, the trio didn't pause to observe. The staggering speed of the dire wolves allowed them to evade the spells, using trees as cover for their retreat. "Ease up a bit. Let them gain some ground," Thorian instructed. Upon receiving his command, Harold and the other two dire wolves modulated their speed, maintaining a pace fast enough to elude the humans, yet not so swift as to lose them entirely. As the minutes ticked away, the crowd of frenzied men and women swelled in number. By Thorian's estimation, they were nearly 150 strong. Good, now is the time. As if on cue, the Earth Magus, Saxum, unleashed his newly acquired spell, Earth Tremor. The ground beneath them shook and rumbled with the spell's casting, causing the front line of men and women to lose their footing and tumble. Those following tripped over the fallen bodies like a chain of dominoes, bringing the entire group to a standstill. Seizing the opportunity, the trio halted. Much like before, Thorian and Ventus launched their combined spell while Aqua sent his skills cascading one after another. Simultaneously, Saxum's unit sprang forth from behind the trees, ambushing the stunned human group. The priest bestowed blessings upon the warriors, while Aqua fortified them with his water shield. The evolved warriors surged forward, axes at the ready. The largest of the brown kobold variants enveloped their bodies in rock armor, augmenting their defenses even further before diving into the fray. The Magi, on the other hand, lent their support to the warriors with long-range firepower. While the kobolds engaged the humans with unbridled ferocity, Thorian was careful to direct their combined spell far from Saxum's warrior unit. As the brown kobold ravaged through the human ranks from the right, Thorian and Ventus seared those on the left, leaving the humans with no escape routes. Thorian couldn't suppress a grin as the toll of human casualties increased by dozens with each spell cast. The more he slew, the greater the rewards he would reap. However, even as Saxum's ambushed group dwindled, more humans charged out of the trees towards them. Soon, Thorian could discern hundreds of ill-equipped, frenzied men and women forming an encirclement around him. "Fall back," Thorian commanded, his eyes sharply trained on the encroaching wave of humans. Upon receiving his command, Saxum's unit wheeled about and made a break for their leader, with Thorian and Ventus providing protective cover using their potent combination skill. Only once the last kobold had safely retreated behind him did the duo pivot on their heels and sprint towards safety. Astride their dire wolves, Thorian and Ventus swiftly closed the distance with Saxum and his warriors. They then deliberately moderated their speed, ensuring that their pursuers remained within their line of sight. "Saxum, it's time for us to part ways," Thorian ordered, his voice steady amidst the turmoil. "You head south, I'll go north. Stay true to the plan until you reach Zogthar." "Understood, my king," Saxum responded, his tone solemn yet determined. "May fortune favor you." With that, Saxum and his unit veered off to the south. Meanwhile, Thorian, accompanied by Ventus and Aqua, spurred their mounts northward. Just as Thorian had anticipated, the human onslaught divided into two separate factions, each determined to intercept him and Saxum. Spearheading the group trailing Thorian and his comrades was a fleet-footed assassin whose nimbleness rivaled Thorian's own. The man brandished an enormous knife, a wild and frenzied gleam lighting up his eyes. "Is he a first advancement assassin?" Thorian raised an eyebrow. "So like I thought, it's the Soul Reaver quest. They are getting double the experience in exchange for their humanity." "Ventus, turn around," Thorian commanded, twisting in his saddle atop Harold to confront the approaching foe. "Let's give them a taste of fire. Aqua, keep your sights locked on that swift vermin." "Was waiting for you to say that, King," Ventus replied, spinning around with a wicked grin splashed across his face. Meanwhile, Aqua merely acknowledged with a curt nod. Poised to execute their deadly combination attack, Ventus and Thorian released their abilities upon the advancing humans. The nimble assassin, however, swiftly responded to the imminent threat, launching himself skywards and allowing the searing wave to consume the assassins and warriors trailing behind him. A smug grin spread across his face as he falsely believed he had deftly evaded a fiery demise. But his self-congratulatory moment was short-lived when Aqua unleashed his spell. Aqua's triple jet stream slammed into the assassin before he had the chance to touch down, riddling his body with countless perforations. The force of the water mage's devastating spell catapulted the lifeless body back into the blaze, incinerating it along with the rest of his comrades. But this lethal display did little to quell the fervor of the frenzied humans. It was as if their sole focus had narrowed down to slaughtering Thorian and his kobold kin, and they seemed willing to sacrifice their lives 1,000 times over to achieve that brutal objective. Thousands of corrupted souls. Thorian cast a solemn gaze upon the surge of humans before him. The surrounding forest had succumbed to the blaze, the rising flames only serving to amplify the pandemonium they had unleashed. Whoever accepted that quest will become a truly dangerous figure. I can't even imagine the rewards for corrupting so many. While their actions appeared unhinged, the humans weren't entirely bereft of strategy. They were hell-bent on taking down Thorian, but they understood that a blind pursuit would yield no results. Consequently, their mages began to hurl fireballs, igniting the surrounding forest. Their reasoning was elementary. Thorian wouldn't be able to evade them if there were no escape routes left to exploit. This is insanity. With a click of his tongue, Thorian turned to his two companions. We head to Forloon's spot. At his directive, the group deftly altered their trajectory. Their dire wolves, utilizing wind leap, leapt over the raging flames, their agile forms weaving through the inferno. Meanwhile, the humans frantically sought any possible path, some even braving the fire's wrath directly, only to swiftly realize that they, unfortunately, lacked any form of flame resistance. Madness. By this stage, the ranks of the humans had noticeably diminished. Despite their initial strength in the thousands, the ones relentlessly pursuing Thorian had dwindled to mere hundreds. Smoke and soot choked the air, making each breath a laborious endeavor. However, this suffocating atmosphere served only to underscore the dire tragedy unfolding before Thorian's eyes. Whoever is behind this is definitely ruthless, though I'm in no position to judge them. In a peculiar way, Thorian felt a sense of elation. The opportunity to have so many humans served to him on a silver platter was not a situation he had foreseen. His only quandary was that each corrupted soul he extinguished, inadvertently, would only serve to augment the power of the mastermind orchestrating this chaos. And you dare to mess with what's mine. If anything unbecoming happened to Nox, I will take my sweet time stripping you of your limbs. King, your expression is scary. Ventus's voice pulled Thorian back from his ruminations. His hand moved to touch his own face, registering the petrifying grin that had taken root there. We're almost at our destination, Aqua announced, steering everyone's attention ahead. In the distance, a large rocky outcrop became visible, the very location where Thorian had positioned Forloon and his unit. After bypassing the predetermined ambush point, Thorian and his companions halted several dozen meters away, poised and patient. They dispatched the first wave of overzealous humans with relative ease. It was only when the area began to teem with increasingly frenzied humans that Thorian finally signaled the next phase of their plan. Now, upon Thorian's command, the silver-furred warriors unleashed a deafening roar that resonated through the ranks of the surrounding humans, stunning them into stillness. Without the need for verbal communication, Thorian and Ventus once again unleashed their synergistic assault, the front lines of humans succumbing to the searing inferno. Simultaneously, Forloon and his men surged forward, eager to reap the spoils of their well-planned stratagem. Level up. Gazing at the notification before him, a satisfied smile traced its way onto Thorian's lips. Humans surprisingly give a good amount of experience points. Herald, go have your fun. Thorian dismounted his companion's back. Upon receiving Thorian's telepathic message, the towering direwolf offered a toothy grin. I had started to lose hope of hearing those words. Having been given free rein, Herald bared a feral grin and revealed his true form. A blinding light engulfed him as his already imposing body swelled further in size, his dark fur gaining blazing red tips. His eyes gleamed with a golden hue as he launched towards the onslaught of humans in a powerful leap. Each swipe of his colossal paw claimed numerous human lives. His unrestrained onslaught showed no prejudice, whether child or elderly woman. Flesh was torn, bones were shattered, and blood was shed indiscriminately. Indeed, in the face of death, all were deemed equal. Aqua and Ventus's direwolves also joined their king in the fray, overwhelming their adversaries with brute force. Simultaneously, the kobolds under Forlun's command surged forward, cutting a path through enemy ranks with their superior strength and skills. All the while, Thorian, Ventus, and Aqua offered devastating long-range support with their potent spells. Amidst the chaos of the human ranks, a heavily armored man wielding twin axes caught Thorian's attention. His eyes, wild with fervor, held a singular desire to slay Thorian. "Monster King!" he bellowed above the clamor of battle. "I will kill you. I will kill you, and I will level up so much no one will stop me." With surprising agility for a man of his size, he charged towards Thorian, his axes primed for a lethal blow. A powerful blue glow enveloped his weapons, amplifying the impending attack. As the human fixed his sights on Thorian, Forlun positioned himself in the man's path, declaring, "You'll have to contend with me first." Caught off guard, the human had no time to respond. He emitted a raw, guttural war cry and swung both axes at Forlun's chest with all his might. Clank! The sound of steel against steel echoed across the battlefield as the human's assault was thwarted. His axes slipped from his grasp, his arms trembling from the powerful collision with Forlun's golden armor. Forlun's chestplate, on the other hand, remained unscathed, shimmering as brightly as the day Ventus had bestowed it upon him. After a beat, the human warrior erupted into a horrendous scream as a bloody gash abruptly appeared across his chest, spewing forth a torrent of blood. Putting an end to the man's agony, Forlun decapitated him, his head separated from his body with a swift cleave. The battle continued to unfold predictably. Given their clear dominance, Thorian dispatched one of the newer Kobloids to notify Lapis and his unit, so they too could partake in the skirmish. This was a prime opportunity to increase their human kill count for the quest, and Thorian wasn't about to deprive them of it. Time marched on as the kobolds and direwolves wrought havoc upon the humans. The disparity in power was simply too vast. Even on the rare occasion a kobold or direwolf sustained injury, priests were at hand to promptly administer healing. The Kobloids, however, had fewer opportunities to engage in the combat. While those who had chosen the paths of priests or magi were able to provide support from a distance, sending the assassins or warriors into the fray was tantamount to issuing them a death warrant. In their frenzied state, the humans would not have shown any mercy. Consequently, Thorian commanded them to hold back, instructing them to only strike when a clear opportunity arose. By the hour's end, the battlefield was strewn with hundreds of human corpses, surrounded by the raging, consuming flames of the forest. Despite Aqua's valiant attempts to halt the fires spread with his water spells, they did little to quench the ferocity of the inferno. The inferno roared, wild and untamed, pressing Thorian's men into fits of coughing as acrid smoke filled their lungs. Flames danced mercilessly around them, felling trees that crashed to the ground and severed their escape routes. Thorian's eyes darted about, scouring the flaming chaos for his team of assassins. "Alacritas, come here." On command, the silver-furred assassin darted towards Thorian, his fur shimmering against the blaze. "Yes, King? How may I help?" "Take the assassins with you and head south," commanded Thorian. "Search for our men caught within the fiery chaos and help them. Proceed to Saxum and Zogther thereafter." Acknowledging the order, Alacritas nodded and sped off towards the rest of the assassin team. The kobolds, silver-furred like their leader, raced through the fiery tumult with swift agility. Meanwhile, Aqua along with the other magi were locked in their own battle against the fire. They launched water ball after water ball into the inferno, but their attempts seemed to do little more than momentarily disturb the flames. Even Ventus, using his gale slash, struggled to make headway. His technique allowed him to slice through the flaming trees with relative success, but it was still insufficient to curb the spread of the relentless blaze. The silver lining is that most of the trees within the village were felled earlier. Only the wall risks succumbing to the flames. Yet, the potential devastation of the forest was far from an acceptable outcome for Thorian. A fire of such magnitude would ravage the land, leaving a desolate and barren landscape inhospitable for growth or survival. Our current tactics are proving futile. It feels akin to trying to fill a sieve with water. As he observed the Magi hurling their water balls into the inferno, the hopelessness of their strategy became painfully evident. However, the longer he watched Aqua and Ventus, the deeper the creases of his brow became. A potential solution seemed to hover on the precipice of his understanding. Now I remember. I completely overlooked that particular interaction. A new strategy forming in his mind, Thorian called out to the wind-wielding kobold. Ventus, unleash your wind gust. Upon hearing Thorian's command, Ventus found himself puzzled. King, that will only fuel the fire. Just do it, Thorian insisted, a determined note in his voice. I have a plan. Putting his trust in his king's judgment, Ventus clicked his tongue and prepared his spell. As he conjured the powerful gust of wind, Thorian simultaneously manifested a water ball in the palm of his hand. Their skills synchronized just as before. Ventus's wind gust raced towards the fire, closely trailed by Thorian's water ball. The moment the water ball collided with the gust of wind, it exploded into countless tiny droplets, lending the gust an aqueous texture and a subtle bluish tint. The unique fusion of their abilities struck the inferno, and the result was immediate. Flames wavered and diminished, their fiery wrath subdued and scattered. Yet, this victory was minor, affecting only a small fraction of the forest. The majority of the landscape remained ablaze, radiating intense heat all around. Yes! Forloon's shout of triumph cut through the cacophony of the blaze. We can defeat this fire. All hail the king! All hail the king! The other kobolds echoed, their voices creating a unified cry of hope. Thorian was taken aback by Forloon's fervor, but he had no time to dwell on it. All water and wind Magi, replicate our strategy. He directed, his voice resounding above the din of the flames. We will halt the advance of this fire. We shall extinguish it with our collective might. The Magi exchanged glances at his command before implementing the new strategy themselves. Soon, they were all emulating the king's example, merging their abilities to douse the fire, one small sector at a time. The remaining kobolds, particularly those who had evolved into the brown-furred variant with hulking frames and rock-plated shoulders, were far from idle. They used their unique abilities to expedite the process. With powerful strikes, they cratered the ground, causing the flaming trees to tumble into the hollows. This action simplified the task for the Magi by negating the need to target both the canopy and forest floor. Moreover, it made the fire's path more predictable, further aiding in their strategic attack. Observing the advancements they were making, Thorian approached Aqua and declared, I need you to take over my position. Aqua looked momentarily perplexed, but then comprehension dawned on his face. Are you venturing towards the village, my king? Yes, I am, Thorian confirmed, his eyes hardening with a furious intensity. I want to see for myself what happened to Nox. May fortune accompany you, my king. Aqua respectfully inclined his head in a bow. Thorian turned, heading towards Forloon and the other warrior kobolds. Lacking any skills beneficial to the ongoing battle with the fire, their role was relegated to vigilant watchmen, standing guard against potential threats or to aid any Magi in danger. Forloon, dispatch a scout team to spread the word, Thorian instructed. We need the Magi from the other groups to join our efforts. Halting the spread of the fire from the side alone won't suffice. Upon receiving Thorian's directives, the moon kobold, Forloon, responded with surprising enthusiasm. Right away, king. I will take a small group with me and I will go immediately. He pivoted to one of the warrior kobolds at his side, adding, Kryman, you will be taking charge here while I'm away. Don't let any harm happen to Magi while they're busy using their spells, understood? Understood, Forloon, Kryman responded, his voice steady. You can depend on me. With Forloon obediently setting about his orders, Thorian redirected his attention to the one companion he intended to bring along. Vigil, I need your company on this journey. The moon-tattooed priest comprehended the gravitas behind Thorian's request and bowed, his expression solemn. Do not yield to despair, my king. We may yet find favor with fortune. Thorian offered only a silent nod in response, his gaze heavy with unspoken concerns. He was well aware that the Shadowstalker's continued absence suggested a high probability of an adverse outcome. I've never thought I'd see such an expression on your face. Harold strode over to Thorian with a confident gait. Was this person dear to you? Your emotions seem in disarray. As Thorian regarded Harold, flashes of Nox filled his mind's eye. Memories of the first day when the then White Kobold had decided to follow him flooded his thoughts. His gaze dropped and his lips turned dry. I made a vow to grant him power beyond imagination, Thorian responded telepathically. This is only the dawn of his journey. There is much he has yet to witness. Harold regarded Thorian for a few heartbeats before lowering himself to the ground, an unspoken offer for Thorian to mount him. Let's move. There is no use losing hope yet. Thorian nodded and ascended onto the broad back of the direwolf king. As the wolf rose to his full stature, their combined presence was striking. The pair radiated a regal aura that befitted their status as twin monarchs. Vigil, too, found his mount on a dire wolf, and together, they commenced their journey through the blazing forest. Emboldened by the direwolf's power and swiftness, the flames held no terror for them. They effortlessly vaulted over the flaming obstacles, their path lit by the consuming fire. Within mere minutes, the pair traversed the majority of the engulfed forest, the incinerated wall of the village becoming discernible in the distance. The bodies of humans and monsters set aflame were strewn across the landscape, their burning forms adding to the nauseating smog that choked the air. At least the issue of the sea of decaying corpses surrounding the wall is resolved. As they neared the village, a sudden premonition clutched Thorian's heart. Looking down, he saw the ground beneath Harold's paws glowing with an intense orange light. Boom! King! Vigil's horrified shout echoed around them as a pillar of flame surged skywards, engulfing Harold and Thorian. The surrounding roots, leaves, and grass were instantly incinerated by the furious blaze. Suddenly, a manic cackle filled the air, emanating from an untouched thicket of bushes. From its depths emerged a man with hair as fiery as the blaze around him. His eyes glowed with a demonic light, while bone-like protrusions jutted from his forehead, resembling a fresh pair of horns. I killed you! Monster King, I killed you! He raved, his voice echoing with the madness of his declaration. Only I am king. The Flame King. From the heart of the inferno, a titanic form took shape. Thorian, astride his steed Harold, launched himself clear of the surprise attack. His red fur bore the scars of multiple burns, yet no trace of damage dared to breach his skin. Trying to surprise me with a fire attack, what a joke. In command of the direwolf king, Thorian's gaze was as icy as it was unyielding, fixed on the crazed fire magus. Even under his transformation, Harold seemed virtually unscathed. His bestial form, larger and significantly more resilient than his usual state, held steadfast against the Magus's meticulously planned onslaught. The sight of Thorian's nonchalant emergence from his explosive attack warped the human's countenance into a mask of sheer insanity. With a battle cry that was half beast, half madman, he conjured a sphere of fire, dwarfing Thorian's fireball. He summoned every ounce of his dwindling power, teetering on the edge of total exhaustion, before he unleashed his most devastating spell. How slow can an attack be? Harold quipped, his tone veering towards tedium. As the Magus released his cataclysmic onslaught, the direwolf king employed his wind leap, effortlessly vaulting over the giant fireball. A luminescent green tint shimmered on his paw as he set his claws into the frail form of the fire Magus. The second Herald's claws made contact with the unhinged sorcerer, the fire spell erupted behind them. The explosive force propelled Thorian slightly forward from the shockwave. Twisting around, he saw a sea of flames that had claimed a vast swath of land, their fiery tendrils clawing towards the heavens. These amateurs and their theatrics, he mused. What self-respecting fire Magus lacks control over his own flames? I was concerned for you for a moment there, my king, Vigil ventured, his tone a blend of shock and exhilaration. He then directed his gaze at the lifeless form beneath Harold's gargantuan paw. For a man with such formidable offensive power, his defenses were definitely not up to par. I do not know what he was thinking staying in ambush alone. A magus is never without his group, Thorian mused, shaking his head. Still, I suppose relative to the others, his intelligence deserves some commendation. With the immediate danger neutralized, the pair resumed their journey towards the village. As they traversed the scorched perimeter, Thorian's anxiety ebbed away upon noticing the village's interior had escaped major devastation. Homes were battered, and several facilities required repair, but the flames had not permeated the settlement. If not for the preemptive efforts of the orcs and Ventus in tree clearance the previous day, the destruction could have been catastrophic. Thorian and Vigil, astride their dire wolves, meticulously searched the village for any trace of the elusive shadow stalker. The settlement was littered with the fallen, most casualties being human, but many Kobloid civilians had also tragically lost their lives in the onslaught. Navigating the debris-strewn paths of the village, they arrived at the Assassin's Guild. There, Whisperwind stood guard with a troubled look etched across his face. As they drew near, the guild master's voice reached them. "Thorian, get over here," he commanded. The strain in Whisperwind's tone took Thorian by surprise. The Shadowkin had always been a bastion of stoicism. Quickening their pace, the pair steered their mounts towards the guild, halting at the entrance. "Let's go inside," Whisperwind motioned towards a room to the left. "There's something you must see." Upon entering, Thorian's face contorted in shock. The Shadowstalker was slumped next to the desk, his body a gruesome tableau of burns, deep gashes, and puncture wounds. By all logic, he should be dead, yet dark tendrils, akin to veins, coiled around his terrible injuries. In fact, Thorian could discern the faint crimson glow of blood coursing within this dark shroud. "Nox, what has happened to him?" Vigil cried out, horror ringing in his voice. "I will heal him right away." As the priest commenced his sacred chant, Thorian offered him a helpless glance. It's futile, yet he held his tongue, allowing the priest to give his all. As the white-furred kobold completed his incantation, silvery moonlight enveloped Nox's battered form. Yet, even as the illuminating glow ebbed, the grievous wounds remained undiminished. Only some of the burn scars mottling his body seemed to have been somewhat mitigated. "Your healing spell won't be enough," Whisperwind declared, shaking his head. His luminous sky-blue eyes narrowed in a pained expression. "Only the ultimate spell of a second advancement priest has a chance. Even then, the success rate is merely 50%. That? No, it can't be," Vigil murmured, his gaze sinking to meet Whisperwind's grim revelation. In contrast, Thorian fixed his stare on the guild master, determination etched across his features. "How long does he have?" "I can maintain my skill to pump blood into his heart for 10 days, Whisperwind admitted with a resigned sigh. "After that, it will naturally dissipate, and I won't be able to reuse it for an extended period." 10 days, you say? Thorian's eyes widened, his spirits lifting as a glimmer of hope ignited within him. "Then there remains a possibility." With a deep breath to steady his whirling emotions, Thorian offered the guild master a respectful bow. "Thank you for keeping Nox safe. Thank you for sheltering him and providing protection." Thorian was far from naive. The lifeless human forms littering the guild's exterior painted a stark picture. The guild master had gone above and beyond to safeguard Nox from the frenzied human mob, even at the risk of jeopardizing his own future should Thorian's side have lost the conflict. "He's his own savior," Whisperwind retorted. "Despite his severe injuries, he slaughtered hundreds of those brutes. It was purely fortuitous that he stumbled into my territory while unconscious. It's as if his body instinctively sought refuge." Nodding lightly, Thorian turned back to Vigil, a strategic plan already taking shape in his mind. "Have you mastered your healing spell yet?" Taken aback by the unexpected inquiry, Vigil hesitated momentarily before replying, "Yes. I have achieved maximum proficiency with it, my king." Thorian acknowledged with a nod. "Good, then proceed to the priest guild and advance your class." Comprehending his directive, Vigil inclined his head slightly in assent before making a swift exit. He mounted his direwolf and set a direct course for the Priest Guild. Simultaneously, Thorian's gaze returned to Noxa's ghastly state. Unwilling to leave his friend on display for everyone to see, Thorian turned to Whisperwind and asked, "May I move him? I'd prefer to let him rest in his own home." Caught off guard, Whisperwind paused before shaking his head and sighing, "Unfortunately, that's not possible. If he's too far from me, my skill won't work." He quickly offered words of consolation. "Don't worry. I'll keep him in my own quarters, away from prying eyes. It's the least I can do for him." "Thank you for your consideration." Thorian inclined his head slightly. It was rare for Thorian to bow to anyone. However, for the man who had granted his first follower a second shot at life, he didn't mind the gesture. As so, Thorian stepped outside the guild before Harold communicated with him telepathically. "What's your strategy moving forward?" "First, we will halt the spread of that fire," Thorian responded, his gaze fixed on the roaring inferno raging beyond the burning barrier. "Afterward, we'll focus on the village's repair to secure our base of operations." "That's a sensible start," Harold agreed. "But what comes next?" "I will delve into identifying the orchestrator of this attack," Thorian vocalized this time, his eyes hardening. "I believe a proper talk is in order." No sooner had Thorian issued his veiled warning than he detected a stir from the side. Swiveling around, he spotted the goblin, Brix, scrambling towards him, gasping for breath. "My lord, I am so glad you've returned." *******. Wolvendale Village. A couple of hours ago. Brix, the diminutive goblin who had whimsically chosen the priest class, had spent several hours concealed within the foliage. He was hardly known for his speed. His late peers often teased him for his sluggishness, but their fleet-footedness hadn't spared them from their grim fate. When the human invasion erupted, he couldn't match the swift escape of his orc and cobloid compatriots. Left behind, he would have been an easy target and a potential feast of roasted goblin. Recognizing his lack of speed as a considerable drawback, Brix elected to utilize his strengths. Taking advantage of his small stature and inconspicuous presence, he nestled himself amidst the bushes, careful not to make a sound. His strategy was simple: to bide his time and seize an opportunity to escape to his lord's place when attention was diverted. He knew that was the only place where safety was guaranteed. As the hours ebbed away, Brix studied the invading humans. They bore little resemblance to the captives his tribe had taken and imprisoned. Those he was familiar with were typically composed, fearful, civilized, capable of displaying a gamut of emotions. In stark contrast, the invaders displayed only crazed fervor, an insatiable bloodlust, and a desire for dominance. They were more monstrous than any creatures Brix had previously encountered. Only 3 among the crowd didn't exude that primal energy, and Brix discerned that they were the ringleaders. A woman adorned in green seemed particularly formidable, commanding a level of fear and respect that was seldom seen by the goblin. Only his lord, Thorian, displayed such a potent influence over those in his vicinity. Therefore, it came as a shock to Brix when the trio suddenly relinquished their control, leaving the village under the guidance of one of the frenzied humans. A foolhardy red-haired man, overconfident in his newfound power. As the trio departed, Brix's curiosity was sparked. He needed to unravel their intentions, their strategies, and the mysteries they harbored. Thus, he made the decision to trail after them. As he had initially planned, Thorian returned to the forest to aid the kobold and cobloids in extinguishing the fire. This endeavor allowed Thorian to hone his wind gust spell, while the water magi employed their abilities to supplement the elemental interplay. Thorian remained mindful of his final spell, Earth Bullet, deploying it whenever a monster attempted to ambush them. Time flowed swiftly as the flames gradually dwindled. Throughout the endeavor, Thorian reflected on his exchange with Brix. The goblin's timidity had proven to be an asset as he observed the unfolding events around the village while his cobloid counterparts had fled. His most significant revelation pertained to the orchestrator of the attack, the mysterious woman in green and her associates. Despite racking his brain, Thorian couldn't recall encountering such a figure. The major factions within Locksley that Thorian was familiar with comprised the Ravenwood family, the minor nobility, and the Great Temple. Rumors of a period of civil unrest stirred by the underworld had reached his ears, but William and his men had swiftly quelled the turmoil, establishing absolute control over their domain. Out of all the people he knew from the region, there wasn't any notable figure that could be described as the Lady in Green. At least not to his knowledge. Moreover, the fact that she received the Soul Reaver quest and was able to harness its power with such proficiency is highly unusual. I've heard of no such occurrence throughout the kingdom. Only that formidable Ulfr from Thalasker has managed anything similar. Lost in thought, Thorian's mind was teeming with conjectures and suspicions, none of which he could verify. His situation was already anomalous, a reincarnation 10 years into the past within a monster's body. Anything else paled in comparison to such extraordinary circumstances. The forest before him was a charred wasteland, the pervasive, ashy smog was utterly nauseating. Nonetheless, they had succeeded in suppressing the rampaging flames. The protective barrier was mostly scorched, with only a few sections still partially intact. We're going to need a lot of wood to repair all of this damage. Territory resources. Resources. Gathered experience, 17.7k. Wood, 4.4k. Surveying the meager number of woof units, Thorian clicked his tongue in disappointment. Fortunately, none of the village's crucial structures had been destroyed, which alleviated some of his concerns. Only the residential areas and the protective wall required reconstruction. Let's start with our fortifications first. Repair wall. Just like previous occasions, the ground beneath them roared and trembled as the towering wall erupted from the earth, reminiscent of a tree sprouting forth. No matter how often Thorian witnessed the spectacle, it never lost its awe-inspiring effect. Nevertheless, the depletion of resources that followed was a poignant sting. The construction consumed a whopping 3,000 wood units from the territory resources, leaving a meager 1,400 units to repair all other damaged structures. That much wood was supposed to last us until the next village upgrade. It's a shame, but that is just part of running a territory. These kinds of costs are to be expected. Having guided his territory for over a decade, evolving it from a village to a town, then to a city and beyond, Thorian was no stranger to the bitter taste of loss and humiliating defeat. Rising above these setbacks was what distinguished genuine leaders from the pretenders. King, we have completed the tally. Thorian swiveled to see Alacritas, the silver-furred assassin, bowing beside him. His complexion was slightly ashen, his eyes dulled, and his cheeks were hollow. How many have we lost? Thorian asked, taking a deep breath. Categorize them for me by civilians, combatants, and their races. Immediately, my king, the assassin nodded. We've lost 20 lives. 10 of them were brown Kobloid civilians, 9 were Kobloid fighters, and 1 was a high orc warrior. Thorian took a moment to fully absorb the grim news before turning his gaze back to the assassin. Summon Zogthar, Lapis, Vivax, Forlun, Ventus, and Vigil. I will be convening a meeting with them at the village hall. Understood, my king, Alacritas acknowledged with a slight bow before darting off at an astonishing speed. Meanwhile, Thorian surveyed the scene around the village. As expected, the atmosphere was one of deep mourning, with some collapsing into tears at the loss of their friends and loved ones, while others moved around with averted gazes. A proper funeral for those we've lost is in order. With that thought, Thorian made his way towards the village hall. As he pushed open the door, the stench of death greeted him. His gaze took in the numerous human corpses scattered around the room, their mouths frothing and their eyes revealing nothing but white. I am relieved you've returned, my lord, Melina greeted from behind her desk, delicately sipping from her teacup. It would have posed a significant problem if I'd had to entertain these new guests any longer. It appears you've handled things in your own unique way, Thorian remarked, casting his eyes over the room. We'll be using the room upstairs for an emergency meeting. Is it currently in a usable state? The elven woman nodded, certainly, my lord. No one has ventured upstairs. Understood. Thorian nodded, his eyes lingering on the bulletin board in contemplation. There's something else I've been meaning to ask. For partially completed, time-limited quests, are the rewards received automatically, or do they need to be claimed explicitly? As soon as the deadline is passed, rewards corresponding to the achieved milestones are distributed automatically, Melina quickly answered. This occurs regardless of whether you've explicitly claimed the quest or not. Thank you for the concise answer, Thorian expressed, a soft smile gracing his features as he thought of his loyal subordinate. At least your efforts haven't been in vain, Nox. Recalling the grievous condition of the Shadow Stalker, Thorian clenched his teeth until his lips bled. His eyes blazed with an intense fury that seemed potent enough to burn holes into the ground. After a few moments, Thorian took a deep breath and successfully transformed his furious expression into a serene one. Upon seeing this, Melina was taken aback by Thorian's previous intensity. I will be leading a campaign into Arundel's sanctuary in a week's time, declared Thorian, startling the elf in his presence. "Why is that, my lord?" She stuttered in response. "I need a specific object," retorted Thorian. "Amelia's crystal tear is the item I desperately seek." As he noticed the elven lady's eyes widen in surprise, Thorian calmly walked towards the staircase, leaving her with a final statement. "Should a forgotten memory about the sanctuary awaken within you, I would be eager to hear it." Without hesitating for a response, Thorian ascended the grand staircase, aiming for the strategic meeting room above. They had an extensive agenda to cover, and the clock was relentlessly ticking away. And Nox can't be healed? The news struck Ventus like a blow. The meeting had just commenced, and although everyone was aware of the recent village fatalities, Nox's critical condition blindsided him. "Healing isn't impossible," Vigil clarified, his voice marked by patience. "What we need is a second advancement priest." That's the information Whisperwind gave us, which Marigold later confirmed. However, even with such a strong priest, there's only a 50% chance of success. Ventus gave his head a confused shake. "I get the whole special healer thing, but how on earth did Nox end up so hurt? I mean, he's fast as lightning. Nothing should have touched him." Forlun responded with a grunt. "It doesn't matter how fast you are. If they throw 1,000 spells at you, you're bound to be hit by something." His gaze dropped as he bit his lip, remorse creeping into his voice. "I should have gone back for him. If the roles were reversed, I'm sure he would have." Thorian, however, firmly shook his head. "You had a duty to fulfill, and you executed it admirably," he counseled. "And let's not speak of him as though he is already lost to us. We have a clear path to his salvation." Vigil looked towards their king, skepticism clouding his eyes. "Can we really achieve the second advancement in just 10 days? He questioned, adding, "But even if we do, our chances of saving him are just 50%, aren't they?" "How is your progress in the human and monster hunting quests?" Thorian abruptly shifted the conversation. Vigil blinked in surprise at the change in topic before answering, I've hit the cap on the monster hunting one. As for the humans, I've reached the 3rd milestone." "Good enough," Thorian nodded approvingly. "You'll receive all the level-up rewards then. Don't claim them until the very last moment. We're going to rapidly elevate your class level with dungeon clears. That way, the rewards you glean from both quests will be as potent as possible." Forlun, feeling emboldened by the strategizing, interjected, "Should we also aim to advance our classes? That way we're all working towards a common objective." Thorian directed his response at Forlun, "Ensure you first unlock your bloodlust skill. It becomes available after slaying 500 monsters once your class reaches level 20. It's the gateway to the Berserker advancement." Bloodlust. Forlun's eyebrows furrowed at the unfamiliar term. He swiftly checked his stat panel, his puzzlement replaced by a triumphant grin. "Already got that skill while battling those savage humans." "In that case, you can proceed with your advancement," Thorian responded, then swiveled his attention back to Vigil. "To revisit your earlier point, yes, using the ultimate priest skill for the second advancement only guarantees us a 50% chance. But there's a workaround to that predicament." As Thorian inhaled deeply, all eyes converged on him. there exists an item that can amplify a skill's effectiveness twofold. However, to procure that item, we must embark on a journey into Arundel's sanctuary. After the meeting's conclusion, Thorian conducted a ceremonious funeral for all those who had lost their lives, either in combat or while fleeing the human invaders. After ensuring the deceased were honored with due respect, he permitted those who had reached the zenith of their respective classes to progress further. In the interim, he returned to the village hall with Harold, intending to grant him citizenship. Unfortunately, this proved impossible, as did bestowing a class upon the dire wolves. Still, Thorian claimed the reward for the dire wolves' quest, which resulted in the erection of a wolf totem adjacent to the territory altar. This totem allowed the dire wolves to communicate with Wolvendale's citizens as if they too had been granted citizenship. Additionally, the wolf totem reinforced the wooden wall's material, enhancing its resilience against breaches. The warrior, priest, and assassin kobolds successfully advanced their classes, leaving the orcs and magi trailing behind. Zogthar and his crew's late arrival meant they were yet to reach their class's maximum level. The magi, meanwhile, were still striving to attain maximum proficiency in their secondary skills. Ventus had chosen the fireball spell, Ifrit had taken rock bullet, whereas Saxum preferred wind gust. Concurrently, Aqua had already selected wind gust, influenced by Thorian's prior elucidation of its benefits. Keen to maximize their time, Thorian assembled his usual party, replacing Nox with Forlune, and embarked on a journey to the verdant labyrinth. Mercifully, Harold and the direwolves could also participate in the dungeon, not as party members, but as companions. Since they had already successfully navigated the labyrinth once, despite being less experienced, less numerous, and lacking both preparation and strategy, Thorian and his team entered the dungeon brimming with confidence. During their foray into the first layer, all the magi exclusively practiced their new skills. Despite this self-imposed handicap, the dungeon was completed with ease, and Thorian managed to level up his race once. The dungeon's bounty included an alchemical recipe, a blacksmith's blueprint, and the requisite materials to create both items. Naturally, they also each pocketed 200 arcane coins. After conquering the first layer, Thorian and his team dared to challenge the second. For Forlune, this was uncharted territory, but he adjusted seamlessly to the new environment. Their expedition through the dungeon, right up to the Golden Grotto, was effortlessly accomplished. None of the members needed to resort to any skills outside of those they wished to train. Ventus and Thorian even managed to deploy their skill combination after a few attempts. This time around, it was Thorian who initiated Wind Gust, with Ventus following up with the Fireball. The Wind Magus needed a few attempts to perfect the timing, but he eventually achieved consistent success. Having already ascended in their classes, Forlune and Vigil seized the spotlight. Forlune confronted each adversary with fierce determination, bolstered by the priest's increasingly potent blessings. Observing their efficient decimation of numerous monsters, Thorian became convinced that the duo could single-handedly conquer the dungeon. Forlune had even acquired a new skill capable of breaching armor, much like the formidable High Orcs, positioning him as a foil to the giant guardian. Upon vanquishing the enormous insect, the team collected their rewards. Among their spoils, the standout item was a blue gale axe, awarded to Forlune. This naturally elicited envy from Ventus, but with no Magus item in the silver chest, he had no recourse. As the group departed the dungeon, Ventus broached the topic of challenging the third layer. Thorian quickly quashed this notion. Although their party had benefited from dual leveling, he insisted that they all advance their classes and acquire their advanced skills before tackling higher difficulty layers. Having accomplished their mission in the Verdant Labyrinth, Thorian and his team began their return journey to the village. Thorian had managed to level up thrice during their venture, once in the first difficulty level and twice in the second. Meanwhile, Vigil had succeeded in advancing his class 5 times, as the requisite experience was considerably less. Naturally, Thorian had substantially improved the proficiency of his 2 remaining spells. Wind Gust had already achieved 100% proficiency, with Earth Bullet not far behind. As the village drew nearer, Thorian's ears detected a shuffling noise to his right. A broad grin spread across his face as he turned to confront a hobgoblin, lunging at him from a small cliff. Earth bullet. As the rocky projectile pierced the green humanoid skull, the creature collapsed abruptly, hitting the ground with a thud. Simultaneously, Thorian's eyes widened in response to a notification materializing before him. Requirement fulfilled. New skill unlocked. Minor elemental affinity. Minor fire affinity already unlocked, absorbing lower skill proficiency. Proficiency absorbed. Minor fire affinity deleted. Did something good happen? Ventus inquired, drawing Thorian back to reality. It's been a while since I've seen you wear such a broad smile, King. Did you unlock a new skill? Forlun joined in. Yes, I did, Thorian replied, grinning. I'm now eligible to advance my class. Vigil chuckled, asking, Congratulations, my king. Do you plan to upgrade your class immediately? There are a few matters I need to address first, but I'll definitely advance soon, Thorian replied, casting a glance at Ventus and Saxum. In the meantime, I want you two to concentrate solely on enhancing your new skills proficiency. You wouldn't want to lag behind those who have already advanced. With those words echoing, Thorian and his team, mounted on their steeds, resumed their journey back to the village. As they drew closer, Thorian opted to examine his status screen. Display panel. Status panel. Race Flame Kobold. Level 20/30ths. EXP. 23/4400. Class Magus. Level 20/20ths. EXP. Max. Lifespan 40 years. Cultivation Realm Chi Gathering Second Stage, 21%. Stats. Strength 69. Agility 75. Constitution 44. Mana 73. Chi 20. Free points 15. Skills. Minor Elemental Affinity, passive. Flame Resistance, passive. Fireball, active. Combustion Touch, active. Water Ball, active. Wind Gust, active. Rock Bullet, active. Glancing at his status screen, Thorian couldn't suppress a smile. The extent of his progress in the relatively brief time since his reincarnation was indeed extraordinary. However, the moment he took satisfaction in his advancement, the hazy image of a lady in green materialized in his mind, wiping the smile from his face. Just who are you? Thorian pondered, biting his lip before shaking his head. It doesn't matter. No matter who you are or what you know, you will eventually succumb to my wrath. That I can promise you. Upon entering the village, the group immediately dispersed. Forlun and Vigil, resolved to quickly elevate their levels, dashed towards their respective units. Meanwhile, Ventus and Saxum concentrated all their efforts on enhancing the proficiency of their fledgling spells. Thorian, conversely, directed his steps towards the cultivation hall. The invasion had left portions of its facilities damaged, but a few rooms remained intact where Thorian could practice his meditation. Given the scarcity of wood and the lack of enough resources for repairs, Thorian relegated this task lower on his priority list. Reflecting on his monster subjects, Thorian clicked his tongue. It's a shame that they are squandering precious cultivation time, but nothing can be done at the moment. It would be more beneficial to wait until the cultivation hall is upgraded before they can truly reap its benefits. Having a true master to guide them in channeling ether through their external channels would be safer than my guidance. There's no point risking chi deviation when we merely need to wait a few more days. Thorian's thoughts shifted to Brix, the goblin, as he pondered over the requirement of 500 citizens needed to upgrade the village. Brix's proposition to broker negotiations with his tribe seemed increasingly appealing. If a large goblin tribe joined their ranks, they might satisfy the criteria for a village upgrade sooner than anticipated. Brushing aside these distracting thoughts, Thorian entered one of the rooms, taking a deep breath. As was his custom, he carefully set aside his verdant robe to avoid soiling it and assumed a lotus position at the room center. As he initiated his meditation session, ether swiftly flowed through his external channels, converging towards his dantian. The familiar friction he typically encountered had diminished due to regular cultivation, resulting in channels clean enough to allow smooth ether passage. Resolved not to repeat yesterday's mistake, Thorian focused solely on amassing more chi. He was aware that the more chi he could gather, the greater his chances were of breaching the first gate of the Vermilion Bird Meridian. As time ticked away, Thorian steadfastly continued his meditation technique, deep, measured breaths aiding the flow of ether through his channels, condensing into drops of chi in his dantian. Soon, his core was brimming with chi, more than doubling the amount from before he began his session. After 2 hours had elapsed, Thorian finally turned his attention to the true challenge. Collecting all the chi within his dantian, he exerted pressure on the obstructed entrance of the Vermilion Bird Meridian. Although he had already unblocked it the previous day, breaking through the viscous, elastic clog that had filled it again remained a significant challenge. Minutes ticked by slowly as the chi, akin to a pickaxe, steadily bored through the meridian. As the flow of chi entered the meridian channel, it gathered momentum, rushing headlong towards the first gate, Ashen Ember. The chi pounding at the entrance of the first gate resembled raging ocean waves crashing against the shoreline. Despite failing to break through, Thorian could sense the entrance trembling violently. It was weakening. Without wasting a moment, Thorian marshaled his chi once again, retracting it to gain momentum before thrusting it towards the entrance. This time, a crack appeared. The congested entrance to Ashen Ember was gradually loosening. Thorian was confident that with a few more attempts, he could breach it. And so he did. Without any delay, he pulled back his accumulated chi and hammered it once again against the entrance, akin to a sledgehammer. With each successive attempt, more cracks emerged until the obstructive substance was finally loosened. With one final thrust, Thorian's chi shattered the repulsive debris and residue barricading the first gate, allowing the chi to surge into the Ashen Ember gate. The moment Thorian's chi traversed the entrance, it underwent a fundamental transformation. It metamorphosed from simple, colorless droplets of energy into fiery, hot orange chi. The dual forces of fire's destructive and purifying power were imprinted on Thorian's chi as it nestled within the Ashen Ember gate, just as it did in the dantian beneath. Congratulations! You're the first in your kingdom to break through the Ashen Ember gate. Congratulations! You're the first in your kingdom to break through the Ashen Ember gate. Seeing the notification in front of him, Thorian was surprised. There was a reward for this kind of thing? Just as he finished his thoughts, another screen popped in front of him. Congratulations! As a reward, you shall receive the Dark Phoenix Flame Arts Martial Technique. First form unlocked. Dark Flame Palm. Dark Flame Palm. Description: the Dark Flame Palm allows the user to channel the Dark Phoenix Flame Chi into their palm, creating a swirling vortex of dark flames that enhance their striking power. When this technique is executed, the palm strike engulfs the target in a potent blaze of dark energy, causing destructive damage. Once the proficiency reaches its maximal value, the second form will be unlocked. Proficiency 0%. Cultivation technique unlocked. Dark Flame Meditation. Dark Flame Meditation. Description: Dark Flame Meditation is a deep meditative technique where the practitioner channels their colorless chi through the Vermilion Bird Gates, located near the heart. As the chi enters these gates, it undergoes a profound transformation, adopting the characteristics of the Dark Phoenix, now known as the Dark Flame Chi. Proficiency max. Overwhelmed by the barrage of notifications that had suddenly appeared, Thorian was stunned. He had never anticipated such a sequence of events. His only aim was to dedicate himself to the diligent and rapid cultivation of his chi. The results, however, far exceeded his expectations. I've never encountered anything like this before, Thorian confessed, his eyebrows knotting together in confusion. The Dark Phoenix Flame Arts? But isn't that Arthur's martial technique? It seems he chose to keep this revelation under wraps. A recollection of Arthur's face prompted a wide grin to stretch across Thorian's features. Unbeknownst to many, he held a deep sense of respect for Arthur. Known as the strongest fire magus in the kingdom and the leader of the esteemed Council of 10, Arthur was a figure of awe and admiration. Your past blessings are now my possession. Don't resent me. It's fate that presented me with this opportunity, not any deceit of mine. Thorian's musings were abruptly disrupted as a foul odor violently invaded his senses, making his stomach churn violently. What in the seven hells? A glance around revealed the source of the nauseating smell. A black substance, as dark as a moonless night, was smeared across his fur. This viscous ooze had overrun half the room, its rank stench so potent that Thorian had to battle to maintain consciousness. This entire room needs cleansing by fire. Though he was strongly tempted to immolate the entire cultivation hall, Thorian instead focused his energy on a water spell. He unleashed a rapid succession of water balls, which not only distressed the wooden floor, but managed to propel the repellent goo out of the hall and into the earth beyond. He then promptly bathed himself in the water from his spell, ensuring not a single crevice of his body was left untouched. Once the nauseating odor had dissipated to a more tolerable level, Thorian inhaled deeply and surveyed the cultivation hall with a grimace. "We need a system to tackle this problem," he mused. "It's already a nightmare dealing with the fallout of my cultivation alone. If everyone in the village were to join in, we'd render this place uninhabitable." Choosing to brainstorm solutions to this dilemma later, Thorian re-entered the room and donned his verdant robe. Patting his pockets, he found the blueprint, the recipe, and the necessary materials to manufacture both items. "I haven't yet inspected the forge or the laboratory. Before introducing civilians, I need to ensure everything's in order. Offering them a production class could significantly enhance both our military prowess and our internal economy." With this strategy in mind, Thorian headed towards the blacksmith's forge. Just as he approached the door, he retrieved the blueprint from his pocket for closer examination. White iron sword blueprint. Skill requirements: blacksmith eye. Materials: 2 white iron ingots. Description: a detailed blueprint for a standard sword made from the material white iron. The plans depict a straight double-edged blade with a simple crossguard and pommel. The white iron, when properly forged, lends the sword a lighter weight and a sharper edge, making it an ideal weapon for those preferring speed and precision. A grin played on Thorian's lips as he toyed with 2 ingots in his pocket. As he stepped into the building, the echo of the blacksmith's hammering reached his ears. The heavy wooden door creaked open, unleashing a wave of intense heat that washed over him. It carried with it the rich, mesmerizing aroma of burning coal and heated metal. The industrial symphony, the rhythmic pounding of hammer on anvil, the gentle hiss of cooling steel, and the intermittent grunts of the engrossed smith, was a soothing melody to Thorian's ears. The smithy was a cavern of shifting shadows and flickering flames. The forge commanded the room, its fiery glow beating like a radiant heart. The blacksmith, an imposing figure, bent over his anvil. His muscles, caught in the forge's gleam, rippled with every strike as he worked a piece of glowing iron. So, a human at last? Upon observing the blacksmith's silhouette, a smile tugged at the corners of Thorian's mouth. The beings from other dimensions had all been of various species, making this the first human to be enlisted in the service of his territory. Once the smith completed his work, he lifted his gaze to Thorian and greeted him. "So, my lord, you have finally arrived." Thorian cleared his throat before responding, "My apologies for the delay. We've been dealing with an invasion, and I haven't had the opportunity to meet you until now." "There's no need for apologies, my lord," the blacksmith dismissed, shaking his head. "Given the ongoing stabilization of your territory, such delays are to be expected." Thorian nodded in acknowledgement before swiftly changing the subject. "I wish to learn the blacksmith skill first. I plan to bring in new citizens to work with you as apprentices within a few hours." "With pleasure, my lord," the blacksmith replied, a broad grin spreading across his face at the prospect of welcoming new apprentices. "As for your skill, here's the scroll." Thorian accepted the skill scroll from the blacksmith's grasp, ripping it down the middle without hesitation. Immediately, a notification materialized in front of him. "Do you wish to accept the production class, blacksmith? All progress in your Magus class will be deleted." "No, just teach me the skill without changing my class." "Blacksmith eye has been learned." Blacksmith eye. Description: master the forge's flames and harness the power of the hammer, skillfully utilizing heat, force, and precision to mold raw metal into strong armor or powerful weaponry. Currently, you can transform low-grade materials into initiate-level items. Your proficiency level affects the quality of your handiwork. The higher your proficiency, the less likely you are to produce flawed items, and the more likely you are to craft rare pieces. Proficiency 0%. Will you be utilizing the forge right away, my lord? The blacksmith's question pulled Thorian from his contemplation. Not immediately, Thorian shook his head. There are still numerous issues that require my attention. I will return later with the civilian apprentices. Take care, my lord, the blacksmith nodded in response. You as well, The blacksmith interjected, Yeshua, my lord. Take care, Yeshua. Thorian nodded with a smile, then made his exit from the forge. With his conversation with Yeshua completed, Thorian set off for the alchemist's lab. Similar to the blacksmith skill, he accepted the alchemy skill without adopting the class. Having accomplished his tasks there, he then headed toward the Magus Guild. While en route to the guild, Thorian decided to review the spell he had acquired on his return journey to the village. Minor Elemental Affinity. Description: you possess a rare affinity for all elements, marking you as a unique existence. All elemental skills that you invoke are more potent and effective than usual. Proficiency 11.8%. Not a bad rate of progression, Thorian mused with a satisfied grin. Closing the skill description screen, he continued toward the Magus Guild, where Fizzlegrin was waiting to greet him. Are you here to advance your class, my lord? Fizzlegrin asked. Yes, I am, Thorian affirmed. Upon hearing his response, the buzzlekin led him into a room to the right. This was where Magi had previously undergone testing for their talents. At the far end of the room, a giant glass orb shimmered, brimming with vibrant hues and twinkling lights, reminiscent of a star-studded night sky. Please place your hand upon that orb, my lord, Thumblewick Fizzlegrin instructed. Thorian complied and pressed his hand against the enigmatic object. Instantaneously, the room plunged into darkness, only to be illuminated moments later by flickering lights. It was as if Thorian had been teleported into the vast expanse of space, twirling amidst the celestial bodies. Checking for requirements. Requirements fulfilled. Possible class advancements. Fire Magus. Wind Magus. Earth Magus. Water Magus. Lightning Magus. Steam Magus. Magma Magus. Ice Magus. Wood Magus. Sand Magus. Elemental Magus. Without missing a beat, Thorian selected the final option. I choose the Elemental Magus. Congratulations, you have advanced to the unique class, Elemental Magus. Congratulations, you have advanced to the unique class, Elemental Magus. Thorian's eyes widened with astonishment as he read the notification. A unique class? So, that was why only Aiden had been the recipient previously. I always found that strange. Understanding dawned on Thorian, and his smile morphed into a wide grin. It seems that I'm stealing fateful opportunities left and right today. As the notification evaporated, the shimmering stars and surrounding darkness that had transformed the room dissipated, returning it to its original state. No sooner had the room normalized than a fresh notification materialized. New skill unlocked, Elemental Synergy I. Thorian eagerly perused the details of the new skill, exhilarated by its formidable power and immense potential. Elemental Synergy I. Description: as a master of the elements, you wield the power to fuse the 4 basic elements into 6 secondary ones. When you attain full mastery of any 2 basic elemental skills of the Magus class, a plethora of new abilities, linked to the resulting secondary element, becomes available to you. The potency of these new abilities will mirror that of the less advanced skill used in the fusion. It's important to note that the same pair of basic elemental skills cannot be used more than once to form a combination. Proficiency 0%. As he read the skill's description, Thorian's jaw dropped. Does that mean I can get 6 skills for free? Without wasting a moment, Thorian promptly initiated the process of skill fusion. His initial selection consisted of 2 skills, Fireball and Wind Gust. Skill fusion complete. Lightning skill list. Lightning Bolt, you summon a bolt of lightning and hurl it at your enemies, causing electric damage and leaving them stunned. Electrostatic Push, you generate a potent surge of electricity that propels your enemies backward, disrupting their balance and delivering a paralyzing shock. Thunderclap, you create a loud, thunderous sound that disorients your enemies, leaving them momentarily stunned. Thorian cast his gaze downwards, deeply engrossed in his thoughts as he began the elimination process. The second skill is practically a diluted version of the first one since it necessitates close-quarters combat to achieve the same effect. However, given my existing arsenal of damage-dealing skills, I hardly need it over Thunderclap. Having made his decision, Thorian selected the third skill. He then redirected his attention towards his next pairing, Fireball and Waterball. Skill fusion complete. Steam skill list. Steam Blast, you generate a powerful blast of scalding steam and hurl it at your enemies, causing burn damage and impairing their vision. Mist Veil, you create a dense shroud of heated mist around you, obscuring enemy sight and causing mild burn damage to those who venture too close. Boiling Shield, you envelop yourself in a protective shell of hot steam, which can cause burn damage to melee attackers and reduce incoming damage. The appeal of a shield skill is undeniable, yet the second skill is far superior. If I can effectively synergize it with Thunderclap, neither human nor beast could withstand my assault at this juncture. Having opted for Mist Veil, Thorian turned his attention to the subsequent skill fusion, Fireball and Rock Bullet. Skill fusion complete. Magma skill list. Pyroclastic Blast, you release a fast-moving current of hot gas, ash, and molten rocks, causing fiery damage and staggering your enemies. Lava Whip, you form a whip made of molten lava. It scorches enemies upon contact and disrupts their stance. Molten Shield, you generate a protective barrier made of magma, which can cause burn damage to melee attackers and block incoming projectiles. Pyroclastic Blast is an exceptional offensive spell, but my defensive abilities are currently subpar. With that thought in mind, Thorian chose Molten Shield before moving on to his next skill combination, Rock Bullet and Wind Gust. Skill fusion complete. Sand skill list. Sand Shroud, you summon a dense veil of swirling sand around you, obscuring enemies' vision and wearing away their defenses with tiny, abrasive particles. Sand Blast, you project a powerful gust of sandy wind towards your enemies, causing damage from the barrage of tiny particles and knocking them off balance. Dust Devil, you summon a small, concentrated whirlwind filled with sand and pebbles that sweeps towards your enemies, battering them and disrupting their footing. Considering the options arrayed before him, Thorian quirked an eyebrow. Sand Shroud seems quite appealing, but it may end up counteracting rather than complementing Mist Veil. Sand Blast appears too feeble, but Dust Devil is intriguing indeed. A spell offering continuous damage and creating hindrances for the enemy would prove invaluable on the battlefield. Having selected his preferred skill, Thorian turned his attention to the next combination, Wind Gust and Water Ball. Skill fusion complete. Ice skill list. Frost Orb, you forge a chilling orb of ice and catapult it at your enemy, coating them in frost and causing them to shiver uncontrollably, reducing their speed and reaction time. Icy Barrage, you conjure a flurry of small frosty orbs and launch them at your enemies, encasing them in ice and disrupting their balance. Glacial Gust, you unleash a frigid wind that can freeze your enemies in their tracks, dulling their movements and enhancing your speed and agility. That last skill is too subpar to even be considered. Thorian clucked his tongue in disapproval and shook his head. That leaves the first two. It's a choice between a high-damage single-target skill or a less potent multi-target one. I already have Combustion Touch and Dark Flame Palm for strong single-target damage, and Frost Orb doesn't seem strong enough to deal with monsters that those two skills would have trouble with. After coming to a decision, Thorian opted for Icy Barrage. He then shifted his attention to the final skill combination on his list, Rock Bullet and Water Ball. Skill fusion complete. With skill list. Bark Barrage, you conjure a flurry of hardened wood splinters and launch them at your enemies, piercing their defenses and leaving them vulnerable. Entangling Roots, you summon a surge of swift-growing roots from the ground that ensnare your enemies, tripping them up and immobilizing them. Druidic Dome, you call upon nature's might to form a protective barrier of interlacing branches and tough bark around you, deflecting enemy attacks and knocking them off balance. That offensive skill is too weak to provide any significant advantage, leaving me to choose between defense and utility. Considering my current abundance of utility skills, the defensive option, Druidic Dome, could harmonize effectively with Molten Shield. Having fused all possible skills at his disposal, Thorian drew a deep breath just as a new notification materialized before him. New skill unlocked, dual casting. At the sight of the skill's name, Thorian's eyes grew wide and his lips curled into a triumphant smile. A chuckle slipped from him. Who would have thought I'd gain access to this ability as well? How could anyone possibly match up against me now? You've achieved quite an impressive advancement. Fizzlegrin's voice cut through Thorian's reverie. I can see you're thrilled with all the new skills. Indeed, I am, Thorian admitted, clearing his throat. But my quest is not over yet. Don't you have some skills for me to purchase? The buzzlekin chortled before advancing towards the door. Follow me to my desk. I have a list of skills from all 4 basic elements that you may purchase from. Thorian tagged along behind the guildmaster, replying, just present me with those of the fire and wind elements for now. My current priority lies in augmenting my offensive power. Understood, Lord Thorian. With that, Thumblewick began to rifle through the scrolls strewn across his desk, eventually handing Thorian a list. There were 2 skills for each of the elements. Greater Fireball Skill Scroll. Class Requirement Magus. Advancement Requirement First Advancement. Level Requirement 1. Use teaches the active skill, Greater Fireball, which allows the user to conjure a large fireball and hurl it at a swarm of enemies, burning them all with its flames. Fire Pillar Skill Scroll. Class Requirement Magus. Advancement Requirement First Advancement. Level Requirement 1. Use teaches the active skill, Fire Pillar, which empowers the caster to summon a towering pillar of roaring flames from the ground at a target location. This caused scorching and burning damage to all enemies in its proximity. Wind Tornado Skill Scroll. Class Requirement Magus. Advancement Requirement First Advancement. Level Requirement 1. Use unlocks the active skill, Wind Tornado. This skill allows the user to summon a swirling vortex of violent winds, forming a small tornado at a chosen location. The tornado pulls in nearby enemies, dealing continuous wind damage and potentially launching smaller foes into the air, disrupting their actions. Wind Blast Skill Scroll. Class Requirement Magus. Advancement Requirement First Advancement. Level Requirement 1. Use bestows the active skill, Wind Blast. This skill permits the wielder to channel the raw force of the gales, creating a concentrated blast of strong wind aimed at their opponents. The Wind Blast not only inflicts great cutting damage, but also has a high chance to knock back and disorient enemies, disrupting their formations. Surveying the skill scrolls arrayed before him, Thorian's choice was immediate. I'll take Wind Tornado and Fire Pillar, please. Right away, Lord Thorian. The buzzlekin clapped his hands together, a covetous smile on his face. That would be 3,000 arcane coins. The price is hefty, but a necessary expenditure. Ensuring he had sufficient coins to acquire the 2 skills, Thorian completed the transaction with Fizzlegrin. Without wasting a moment, he tore open the 2 scrolls. Fire Pillar Skill Learned. Wind Tornado Skill Learned. Upon seeing the 2 notifications, Thorian's smile broadened. I should try and master these 2 as swiftly as possible so I can merge them. I'm curious to see what sort of lightning skills will become available to me once I do. Having completed all his guild-related tasks, Thorian took his leave. There were a few outstanding matters he needed to address within the village. Once he'd resolved these, he could refocus his attention on conquering more dungeons. Having fulfilled his guild obligations, Thorian brought the civilians together, offering them the choice between 2 non-combatant roles, blacksmith or alchemist. Realizing they could still accumulate experience points and level up through crafting rather than monster combat, the civilians unanimously opted for these production classes. The newly minted blacksmiths were constrained by their lack of access to sophisticated blueprints or high-quality materials. As such, their initial foray into forging was limited to rudimentary iron weaponry. The majority of their early attempts culminated in flawed products, yet Thorian remained confident that given time, they would eventually craft the lower-tier white mist gear that his army sorely needed. On the other hand, the alchemist's initial attempts at concocting a basic mana recovery pill likewise resulted in defective creations. Thorian recognized that, even when they managed to successfully produce these pills, their effectiveness would be limited. Each pill could only be consumed once per day before losing its efficacy, unlike the highly rare ones that could be ingested multiple times daily while retaining their potency. After successfully assigning the civilians to their new roles, Thorian ventured towards the wooden wall. There, he rallied a significant portion of his fighters to fell the remaining trees within the village. Following a concerted effort over the course of half an hour, the task was swiftly accomplished. The kobolds, kobolds, and orcs then gathered the remaining tree trunks and deposited them beside the territory altar. Once the wood was swiftly consumed, Thorian turned his attention to their resource inventory. Resources. Gathered experience 21.2k. Wood 3.7k. That's good enough. Filled outer wall. The earth beneath them roiled and quaked, clouds of dust billowing around the village, forming a haze that seemed to reach towards the heavens. The completion of the outer wall marked the beginning of their next tasks. Thorian sprinted to the gates of the inner wall, promptly instructing all units to patrol the newly formed buffer zone between the two walls. It was crucial that they exterminate any monsters lurking within this area before advancing their forces to the outer wall. Following an intensive hour of mass extermination, the space between the walls was finally rendered safe. Thorian stationed the 4 units along the outer wall, assigning them the same directional posts they had previously held at the inner wall. The expanded perimeter, reaching deeper into the forest, necessitated heightened vigilance. Monsters assaulted the outer wall with a ferocity matching that of the previous day's onslaught against the inner wall. Although this escalated the threat of injury and death, it also provided the fighters with ample opportunities to hone their spellcasting skills. The kobolds, too, found their leveling speed bolstered, nudging them closer to their much-anticipated evolution. Meanwhile, the establishment of the outer wall also granted them secure access to a bountiful source of trees and lumber. With the fighters still operating in 2 platoons, Thorian implemented a mandatory rotation system, requiring the squads to alternate between guard duties and tree-cutting tasks every few hours. As the village grew in size and complexity, Thorian understood that their demand for resources would only increase. The need to construct new dwellings and maintain existing structures could swiftly drain their reserves. Moreover, as they continuously upgraded the territory, the costs associated with their buildings would inevitably rise. By the time Thorian had all the necessary systems in place for the efficient functioning of the village, the afternoon suns were high in the sky. Thorian's team, whom he had instructed to intensively practice their spells, had followed his directive faithfully. The Magi had reached peak proficiency in their secondary skills and proceeded to the Magus Guild to receive their class advancements. Ventus emerged as a lightning Magus, Saxum transformed into a sand Magus, Ifrit evolved into a magma Magus, and Aqua gained mastery over his ice abilities. Regrouping with their original squad, Thorian then led them towards the verdant labyrinth. However, they did not bring the direwolves alongside them this time. Due to the larger perimeter that the fighters needed to guard, and the urgent need to gather more wood, the combatants were under a great amount of stress. In such a situation, an unaccounted-for event like the previous human invasion could prove lethal to the fledgling village. As such, Thorian deemed it prudent to keep Harold and the rest of the direwolves in the village to provide further protection. Meanwhile, Thorian and his squad reached the dungeon and proceeded to its 3rd layer. The creatures they encountered there were similar to those found on the 2nd layer, albeit more numerous and marginally stronger. Nonetheless, their newly empowered group had no trouble confronting these beasts. Using his Thunderclap and Mist Veil combo, Thorian and his team were able to keep most foes at bay, leaving them stunned and vulnerable to the range of wide-area spells they had at their disposal. Their journey to the Golden Grotto was uneventful, save for the group's remarkably swift leveling speed. In fact, Thorian managed to level up his class a staggering 6 times during their trek to the Guardian. Upon entering the grotto, Ventus couldn't suppress his awe. "Wow, this guy has somehow grown even bigger," he remarked. "Sush, you're going to alert it," Saxum quickly chided. Thorian cast his gaze on the enormous beast ensconced within the grotto and found himself agreeing silently with the yellow kobold. The gilded spike tail before them was nearly double the size of its second-layer counterpart. Its exoskeleton had evolved considerably, now featuring formidable armored protrusions that speckled its lengthy body. The grotto itself had expanded in size, necessary to accommodate the monstrous creature. "Let's take care of it quickly," Thorian commanded. With this directive, Vigil initiated his incantation, bestowing upon the group his newly acquired skill that enhanced both their agility and constitution. Without a moment's delay, Thorian deployed his mist veil, enveloping the entire grotto in dense fog. Reacting to the unusual developments, the gilded spike tail bellowed and thrashed about. As it moved, Thorian snapped his fingers, and a thunderous roar erupted right next to the beast, immobilizing it with shock. "My turn," Ventus announced, his face breaking into a gleeful grin. He summoned his newfound power, and a bolt of blue lightning descended upon the colossal creature, subjecting it to an intense electrical assault. The beast hissed and convulsed in response, yet it was unable to evade the relentless fury of the lightning magus. "Sit down," Saxum declared, clasping his hands together as he began his incantation. The ground beneath the giant insect morphed into sand, and instead of solidifying as before, the creature sank lower and lower into the earth. Silently, Aqua conjured a giant water ball above his palm and hurled it at the beleaguered beast. The spell not only pushed the gilded spike tail back, leaving it disoriented, but also thoroughly drenched it. Without missing a beat, Aqua cast another spell. He formed an ice orb, roughly the size of a normal water ball, and launched it at the soaked creature. Upon impact, ice propagated across the beast's body, encasing a substantial portion in a chilling grip. "Good work, Aqua," Thorian commended with a smile, then quickly followed suit by launching an icy spell of his own. 5 small frost orbs materialized above him, raining down on the beast like a volley of arrows. The orbs hit the gilded spike tail at various points, each impact site becoming encrusted in ice. "You magi shouldn't have all the fun," Forlun bellowed, his hearty laughter echoing through the grotto as he charged towards the battered guardian. His hefty axe, glowing with a radiant red light that left a trailing hue in his wake, was brought down in a mighty strike. The swing severed several of the beast's frozen legs and gouged a deep wound across its body. Roaring in pain, the beast's body slumped further into the quicksand, the ground continuing to swallow it whole. Once he confirmed that Forlun had cleared the way, Thorian resolved to conclude this increasingly one-sided battle. Wind tornado. The white mist in the air began to whip around with disorienting speed, engulfing the beast in a maelstrom of hot, slicing winds. The tornadoes seemingly counteracted the quicksand's pull, providing the beast with an unanticipated upward momentum. The moment the wind spell was fully formed, Thorian initiated his next incantation, Fire Pillar. Boom! The wind tornado became a fiery whirlwind as Thorian's fire pillar ignited it. The flames licked the ceiling of the grotto, consuming the entirety of the gilded spike tail in a scorching inferno that spanned from its head to its tail. The heat emanating from the intense blaze was so fierce that even Thorian could feel it sting. "King, that's too much," Ventus protested. "We're going to burn as well." Forlun darted towards Thorian and his group, his golden armor bathed in the reddish glow of the flames. "You were about to cook me alive, King," he grumbled. "If you died from such a thing, your life would have been worthless," Thorian shot back. At a loss for words, Forlun merely clicked his tongue and cast his gaze back at the fiery spectacle unfolding behind him. The beast was being roasted alive, encased in a spinning inferno that reached deep into its core. Before long, the beast's silhouette dissipated into a storm of particles that were swept away by the potent winds. "Level up! Level up! Level up! Congratulations, adventurers!" An ethereal voice echoed as the flurry of level-up notifications ceased. You have vanquished the guardian of the third layer, the armored gilded spiked tail. You've shown strength, courage, and exceptional teamwork. The treasure of this layer is yours to claim. As the voice faded, the flaming tornado gradually dissipated, revealing a treasure chest resting on the ground. Notification: Dungeon Layer completion. You have successfully cleared the third layer of the Verdant Labyrinth. As you are the first to clear this layer of the Verdant Labyrinth, your rewards are doubled. Total arcane coins gained 3,000. Additional rewards await in the Guardian's chest. Reward recalibration. Once the notifications had vanished, Thorian and his group proceeded to the treasure chest. It was finally time for them to claim the rewards of their hard work. As Thorian unlatched the heavy chest, a warm golden luminescence leaked outwards. Good, another golden glow. Once the brilliance abated, the team leaned in to inspect the hoard nestled within. Thorian's fingers brushed against the first item, and an ethereal screen materialized before him. Lightning Arrow Skill Scroll. Class Requirement: Magus. Advancement Requirement: First Advancement. Level Requirement: 1. Use bestows the active skill, Lightning Arrow. This skill permits the wielder to channel the untamable forces of the lightning, concentrating them into the shape of an arrow. The lightning arrow provides for immense piercing power, as well as stuns and chars the enemy. A satisfied grin edged its way onto Thorian's face as he scanned the words etched into the scroll. He lifted his gaze to meet the yellow kobold's eager eyes, then, with a flick of his wrist, tossed the ancient parchment his way. For you, Ventus. The lightning magus took a moment to absorb the skill's details, his features gradually brightening into a radiant grin. Yes, that's the type of skill I wanted. Ventus practically leaped at Thorian, wrapping him in an enthusiastic hug. Thank you, King. You truly are the best. Taken aback, Thorian froze momentarily before inhaling deeply. His countenance relaxed, and he gently responded, "Make good use of it." Saxum, echoing the thoughts of everyone present, ventured, "What sort of skill did you get?" "Let me show it to you," Ventus retorted, his hands already busy tearing at the seal of the scroll. The lightning magus stood tall, squaring his shoulders as he directed his gaze towards a gargantuan boulder at the end of the cavern. A roguish grin unfurled on his face. Lightning Arrow. As Ventus finished his chant, blue lightning bolts began to converge in front of his palm, forming a massive arrow of pure energy. The arrow crackled with uncontrolled power, illuminating the grotto with an electric blue glow. Then, with a thunderous roar, the arrow tore through the air, leaving a blinding trail of light in its wake. It hit the giant rock at the end of the grotto with a deafening crash, reducing it to a cloud of dust and flying shards. Witnessing the staggering might of Ventus's spell, all eyes in the cavern widened in awe. All save for one. The lightning magus reveled in the shocked expressions of his comrades. "Do you always have to scream the name of your spell before you launch it?" Aqua grumbled, his eyes rolling expressively. "It's starting to grate on my nerves." "Huh, you're just mad you don't have a skill as good as mine," Ventus shot back with a smug grin. "You can just keep playing with your little water balls that do nothing." "I wouldn't be so quick to judge that," Thorian interjected, his attention once again submerged in the depths of the treasure chest. Emerging from his search, he held aloft an orb roughly the size of his fist, composed of a crystalline blue substance. As he scrutinized it, it seemed as though he held an entire ocean trapped within a gem. Medium water orb. Purity high. Description: an orb made of a concentration of water ether. It is the main material of many high-class water pieces of equipment, mainly staffs and other magus weapons. Depending on the blueprint and the skill of the blacksmith, the resulting piece of equipment can be very powerful. Take this, Thorian extended the blue orb towards Aqua. You can make a very good weapon out of it. You just need the right blacksmith. Aqua inclined his head in a show of gratitude, accepting the offering with a soft smile. "Thank you, King." "It's just raw material," Ventus dismissed with a casual wave of his hand. "By the time you can make a weapon out of it, it will already be useless by tomorrow once we get the rewards from our quest." Saxum frowned, visibly irritated by the lightning magus's condescending tone. "Ventus, stop being a brat. Thorian didn't pay Ventus's comments any heed as he knew that the yellow kobold was young and fresh. His attention was instead drawn to Aqua's downcast eyes. The king offered reassuring words. "Don't worry, Aqua. If you're patient with that orb, you can make a weapon that will last you a long time." Aqua lifted his gaze to meet Thorian's, then nodded firmly. "I shall do so, king." His reassuring words having taken effect, Thorian shifted his attention back to the chest where another skill scroll lay waiting. Bear Strength Skill Scroll. Class Requirement Warrior. Advancement Requirement First Advancement. Level Requirement 1. Use bestows the active skill, Bear Strength. This skill grants the wielder a momentary boost of strength depending on his level and strength stat. This boost lasts 5 minutes before the user enters a weakened state for 3 minutes. This skill can only be used once every 2 hours. For Lun, it seems fortune favors you today, Thorian chuckled, extending the scroll to the visibly stunned moon kobold. Accept this as my apology for almost roasting you whole. Forlun scanned the skill scroll's description, an increasingly excited expression dancing across his features. With a swift movement, he ripped it open and embraced the surge of newfound knowledge. When he looked up at Thorian, his grin was broad and triumphant. "Your apology is very much accepted, King." Thorian responded with a serene nod before delving back into the treasure chest. His fingers soon emerged clutching a unique piece of attire. The robe was a rustic hue of brown, woven from high-quality fibers. Its surface was bedecked with symbols painted in a spectrum of colors, from the verdant green of lush foliage to the muted tone of sun-bleached wood. Earth Collar Robe. Rarity Bluegale. Class Requirement Magus. Advancement Requirement First Advancement. Level Requirement 10. Effect Mana plus 15. Special effect increases the power of earth-based abilities by 15%. Description. This robe, crafted from an unusual blend of resilient, earthly fibers, carries the strength and stability of the earth itself. Silently, Thorian offered the robe to Saxum. The stalwart companion paused momentarily to inspect the description before bowing in respectful acknowledgement. "Thank you, my king." "The pleasure is mine," Thorian returned, his attention drifting back to the remaining contents of the chest. Only 2 items lay untouched, a set of robust bracers and an intricate pendant. Angel's Healing Pendant. Rarity Bluegale. Class Requirement Priest. Advancement Requirement First Advancement. Level Requirement 10. Effects Mana plus 10. Special effects healing spells efficiency increased by 10%. Description: a silver pendant with an angel's wing motif. Wearing it grants a small boost to all healing abilities. Sacred Blessing Bracers. Rarity Yellow Storm. Class Requirement Priest. Advancement Requirement First Advancement. Level Requirement 15. Effects Mana plus 15 Constitution plus 5. Special effects increases the potency of blessing spells by 20%. Description: arm bracers etched with ancient symbols. They bolster the effect of blessing spells and make them more potent. Upon perusing the information displayed on the 2 screens, Thorian couldn't help but be pleasantly taken aback. Priest accessories? These are fairly rare. Take these. They will suit you well, Thorian directed, passing the trinkets to Vigil, who accepted them with grace. The priest momentarily marveled at the item's potent effects before carefully donning them. He offered a respectful bow. "Thank you for this generous gift, my king." "You're welcome," Thorian replied, rising to his feet. "That concludes our treasure hunt. Let's make our way out." However, as he announced the end of their endeavor, Saxum knitted his brow, halting Thorian. "Wait, my king. What about you? It's not fair that we all receive these treasures while you depart empty-handed." Moving to remove the brown robe he had only just received, Saxum made to offer it back to Thorian. But the king stopped him firmly. To return a gift to its giver is not considered good manners. But Thorian met the anxious expressions of his companions with a tender smile. "There's no need for concern. I am already more than sufficiently powerful. Besides, this won't be the last dungeon we venture into today." At this, Ventus's eyes widened and his fists clenched in anticipation. "Wait, are we going to challenge the 4th layer?" "Yes. I was going to ask you about that." "No, "We won't be delving into the fourth layer just yet," Thorian responded, shaking his head yet wearing an impish grin aimed at Ventus. "We have another dungeon in our sights to explore, one that I think you will find particularly exciting." Loxley, Outer City. Jacob squinted up at the dual suns in the sky, a hint of annoyance tinging his expression. The advent of the second sun brought with it an oppressive heat. The sweltering temperatures were made all the more unbearable by the stench of decaying corpses, both human and monster-like, that littered the city. Astride his armored gray steed, Jacob held his lance at the ready to repel any who dared approach. He and his squadron of 7 riders formed an impervious bulwark against the beasts that infested the city. A lone hobgoblin, however, brazenly rushed towards Jacob, its own spear poised to skewer him. "Repugnant beast," Jacob muttered, deftly driving his lance through the charging monster. The hobgoblin's weapon may have boasted a decent reach, but it was no match for the knight's formidable lance. Once the hobgoblin fell, a member of Jacob's squad edged his horse closer. "Captain, were we not supposed to wait for the prince first? Did the plans change? You're green, aren't you?" Jacob responded, a note of derision in his voice. "Leave such concerns to me. I know Prince Tristan better than anyone. He will very much appreciate our scouting efforts to make sure the plaza is safe before his arrival." I see. Sorry for my intrusion." The novice knight retreated hesitantly, resuming his position within the formation. Jacob watched him return to his post with a trace of a confident smile. However, as he turned back to face the desolate cityscape, his expression had once again shifted, assuming a stoic neutrality. "I would be mad to leave this opportunity. I need to get to the plaza first to gain those magical powers." Jacob had observed with a potent mix of awe and resentment as the elderly man's strength burgeoned, surpassing his own hard-earned capabilities. The old man needed only to slay a handful of those grotesque beasts to amass a power that Jacob had devoted an entire lifetime to cultivate. With the despotic reign of Nalia and her henchmen overthrown, an opening had presented itself, an opportunity that Jacob could not afford to overlook. He couldn't passively sit back, entrusting his fate to the whims of the soon-to-arrive prince, who would undoubtedly lay claim to the plaza and wield control over who could and couldn't amass the coveted powers. Such a wait could prove fatal, and, even if he were to survive, the early bird knights bestowed with the powers would be poised for exponential advancement. They would ascend to prestigious ranks of centillion leaders or even vice-generals, while Jacob would remain tethered to his unremarkable post as a mere squadron leader. Such a prospect was untenable. He couldn't let this transpire. Soon enough, their path led them through the ghost of a once thriving marketplace, its current desolation bearing testament to recent turmoil. Their journey ended at the plaza, where the sight of the 4 gargantuan statues provoked a broad smile to stretch across Jacob's face. They were every bit as magnificent as the tales had suggested, their grandeur living up to every whispered rumor that had tantalized his curiosity. "So these are the magical statues we heard about?" One of the knights nudged his armored steed closer to Jacob, his eyes reflecting the grand spectacle before them. "What's our next move, Captain?" "Survey the surroundings first," commanded Jacob, his tone authoritative. "Make sure that Hor's goons are nowhere to be seen." "Roger that, Captain." Heeding Jacob's mandate, the squadron of knights scattered across the expansive plaza, their gazes sweeping over the space, vigilant and calculating. They had already borne witness to the viciousness Nalia's followers were capable of unleashing, from a distance nonetheless, and had no desire to incite their wrath unnecessarily. Simultaneously, Jacob found himself drawn towards the statue depicting a warrior, its intense countenance and air of indomitable strength resonating with his spirit. It epitomized the apex of masculine prowess, a beacon for every man to aspire towards. A smile of anticipation spread across Jacob's face as he edged his horse closer to the towering figure of stone and marble. The instant his hand came into contact with the statue, his eyes widened, flitting with a surge of unexpected surprise. "Would you like to choose the warrior class? What in the gods' good names is this sorcery?" For a fleeting moment, fear coiled around Jacob's heart, only to be swiftly supplanted by an uncontainable exuberance. This was his chance. I choose the warrior class, he declared with resolve. Choose one of these starting abilities. Abilities. Power Strike. Imbue your weapon with magical power and strike the enemy with an attack that deals additional damage. Charge allows the warrior to quickly close the distance to their target, potentially stunning or knocking them down with a small shockwave. Taunting Shout provokes enemies to focus their attacks on the warrior, protecting more vulnerable party members. Weapon Proficiency, passive, allows the warrior to use various types of melee weapons effectively, such as swords, axes, and maces. Shield Proficiency, passive, grants the ability to use shields for added defense, helping to block or deflect incoming attacks. Jacob was far from a competent reader, but these unfamiliar symbols and characters seemed to etch themselves into his understanding as though he had been intimately familiar with them for his entire life. He swiftly perused the list of potential abilities, discerning almost instantaneously which appealed to him most. "Give me the Power Strike," he commanded with conviction. "Congratulations, you have become a warrior. You can check your information by simply saying or thinking display panel." As the notification message dissolved, it took a moment for Jacob to digest the enormity of his transformation. His rigid expression fractured into a barely suppressed smirk, a ripple of laughter threatening to break the surface before he regained his composure. Surveying his surroundings, Jacob noticed that his comrades too, stationed alongside the statues, were in the throes of the emotional tumult he'd just navigated. "This is great. This is amazing. If I play my cards right, I might even become a general by the end of the year." However, his imagination was abruptly halted by the distinct crunch of footsteps on gravel. His gaze darted toward the noise, alighting upon three silhouettes emerging from the grandiose entrance of a formidable stone edifice. Two lean figures flanked a monstrous entity on their right. "Who goes there?" Jacob's voice boomed across the plaza, arresting his squadron's attention and drawing their eyes toward the building's entrance. The figures soon sauntered into the light, unveiling themselves, a colossus of a man with bulging muscles, a spruce, slender middle-aged man, and a slender woman garbed in green. On seeing the woman, Jacob's eyes dilated in shock. He cast a rapid, furtive glance around, his senses on high alert for any potential threats. Only once he confirmed his safety did he allow himself to exhale a deep, measured breath. "Nalia, you whore," he spat venomously. "You dare show yourself here with none of your treacherous underlings? Do you not cherish life? A bunch of rats already appeared?" Ragnar, the hulking man, cracked his knuckles and neck, a menacing prelude to the impending skirmish. "I wanted to test these new powers you gave us, and these morons came here just at the right time. Take a deep breath, Ragnar, and don't let your muscles do the thinking for you," retorted Soren, the slender man, before he cast a disdainful glance at Jacob and his assembled knights. "What use is there in going all out against such weaklings?" As the two men bickered, Jacob seized the opportunity to strategically align his knights. Observing Ragnar and Soren's momentary distraction, he scoffed, refusing to squander the advantage. "Charge the traitors." His call to arms rang out across the plaza, a thunderous war cry propelling his squadron forward on their mounts, a ferocious tide crashing towards the trio. Jacob led the onslaught, his lance poised menacingly. As he galloped forward, he found his thoughts drawn to the formidable skill he had recently acquired, and a smirk danced on his lips. Power Strike. His lance was bathed in an ethereal blue glow, its lethal potential amplified as if fueled by an arcane force. The transformed weapon filled Jacob with an unassailable confidence, bolstering his belief that even a bear, should one stand before him, would be impaled by his imbued lance, its heart skewered mercilessly. Yet, this newfound assurance crumbled to dust as his gaze locked onto Nalia. A disturbing realization pierced his conviction. She was smiling. Her expression was insouciant, rendering their fervent assault into a frivolous display of child's play in her eyes. Her indifference ignited a fury within Jacob that far surpassed any provocation he had ever endured. Particularly arresting were her eyes, tranquil yet glowing with an otherworldly blue radiance that mirrored the mystical hue of Jacob's lance. They bore an uncanny resemblance to a vast, crystalline ocean captured and confined within the depth of her gaze. Jacob found himself caught in their ethereal allure, spellbound to the point of irrationality, ensnared within her mesmerizing pupils. Time seemed to halt its inexorable march, leaving him transfixed atop his charging warhorse. For an elongated heartbeat, Jacob succumbed to a sensation of being entrapped within an interminable time warp, a prison from which escape seemed impossible. As the despair began to coil around his heart, solidifying his belief, an abrupt whooshing sound zipped past him. Jacob's perspective skewed, his gaze still locked with Nalia's, yet now his eyes were forced to pivot as his view tilted. Suddenly, a horse thundered past him. Lifting his gaze to the rider, the puzzlement of the previous moments crystallized into a horrifying epiphany. The man atop the galloping steed was headless. The lifeless body soon toppled from the frenzied horse, which continued its relentless charge toward the awaiting trio. Yet, as it neared them, Ragnar seized the creature in a vice-like grip, throttling the life from its arteries. The animal thrashed in futile protest for a few agonizing moments before succumbing to the monstrous assault. Jacob was transfixed, his expression etched in a mask of shock. His aspirations had been tantalizingly within reach, yet as his vision blurred and faded, he was brutally confronted by the harsh and unforgiving face of reality. "You're still alive, aren't you?" Ragnar's voice, laced with malevolent glee, bore into Jacob's psyche, inciting a primitive fear within him despite the severed link with his heart. The monstrous figure took imposing strides towards the dying Jacob. Upon reaching him, Ragnar seized Jacob's head, turning it forcibly to face the remains of his squadron. Despite the blurriness that veiled his vision and the fog that clouded his consciousness, Jacob could discern the shadowy forms of his fallen comrades, and the dreadful truth of their fate resonated within him. They had been annihilated. Coming out of the verdant labyrinth, Thorian decided to check out his status screen. Display panel. Ding. Status panel. Race Flame Kobold. Level 20 30ths. EXP 123/4400. Class Elemental Magus. Level 9 40ths. EXP 451/1520. Lifespan 40 years. Cultivation Realm Chi Gathering 4th Stage, 3.5%. Stats: Strength 78. Agility 84. Constitution 53. Mana 73. Chi 60. Free points 60. Regular skills: Minor Elemental Affinity, passive. Flame Resistance, passive. Elemental Synergy, I, passive. Dual Casting, passive. Fireball, active. Combustion Touch, active. Water Ball, active. Wind Gust, active. Rock Bullet, active. Thunderclap, active. Mist Veil, active. Molten Shield, active. Dust Devil, active. Icy Barrage, active. Druidic Dome, active. Fire Pillar, active. Wind Tornado, active. Cultivation Skills: Dark Flame Meditation. Dark Phoenix Flame Arts. First Form, Dark Flame Palm. Production Skills: Blacksmith Eye. Alchemist Eye. A wide grin spread across Thorian's face as he studied the expansive status screen before him. It is finally looking like a proper panel. And seems like I should distribute my free points. I have been hoarding them for quite a while already. Aetherline Nexus had proven invaluable to Thorian over the past 2 days, enabling him to conserve his mana efficiently. However, he recognized the reality that he couldn't always rely on the safety of his territory during battle. To make matters more complicated, the first advancement skills like Fire Pillar and Wind Tornado were mana-intensive. With his current mana pool, Thorian could only cast these spells around 10 times each before depleting his reserves, even when leveraging the Wolvendale's attribute. Considering this, he decided to assign a portion of his hoarded points to bolster his mana. Mana: 73-100. Thorian's offense primarily relied on his magical skills, rendering the strength attribute less valuable for his strategy. Instead, he opted to distribute the remaining points between agility and constitution, ensuring he was nimble on his feet and resilient in combat. Agility: 84-110. Constitution: 53-59. As the points were allocated, a sense of lightness swept over Thorian, making him feel as swift as a breeze. His agility had now exceeded that of most first advancement assassins, positioning him as the fastest mage within his category. Armed with his comprehensive array of skills, Thorian felt an invigorating sense of near invincibility. Once I get some movement-focused martial techniques, no one would ever hope to strike me with their skills. Thorian's advancement to the Elemental Magus class furnished him with unparalleled long-range prowess, both offensively and in utility. His racial abilities, along with the Dark Phoenix Flame arts, granted him a level of close-quarters strength that rivaled most warriors and assassins. The only potential gap in his repertoire was a mobility skill like Nox's Whisper Step, which would allow for rapid battlefield repositioning. However, Thorian's extraordinary agility emulated such a skill's effect to a degree. And if he required an additional burst of speed, he could always rely on Herald. It wasn't a baseless notion that Thorian considered his current abilities to be invincible. "King, what is this dungeon we are looking for?" Ventus's query snapped Thorian from his contemplation. They were currently deep inside the Sherwood forest, surrounded by long vines and tall trees. Turning his gaze to the yellow kobold, Thorian paused for a moment, regaining his kingly demeanor. "We're searching for a lightning element dungeon. The creatures within wield the power of lightning, and the rewards echo this elemental theme." "Wait, is this true?" Ventus questioned, visibly excited. "Does that mean I could get more lightning spells?" "I did say you would find it to your liking," Thorian replied, a smile playing on his lips. Overhearing the exchange, Saxum couldn't help but shake his head. "You're a fortunate one, Ventus. You should leave some luck for the rest of us." Ventus sheepishly grinned at the compliment. "I wish I could, but sadly it's just my talent. I was simply born lucky." The atmosphere shifted slightly as Aqua chimed in, somewhat despondent. "I guess my abilities will be largely irrelevant in that dungeon then. Lightning and water aren't exactly the best combination." Thorian tilted his head at the disheartened Aqua. "I find your perspective rather intriguing. From my point of view, you might actually be our most valuable asset in that dungeon." Confusion washed over the team, especially Aqua, who was visibly taken aback. "I do not understand, my king. Isn't lightning even more powerful with the presence of water?" "Yes and no. It really depends on the context," Thorian replied. "If you flood the area with water and the enemy uses long-range lightning attacks like Ventus, then yes, we would indeed find ourselves in a problematic situation." His eyes settled on Aqua, a playful grin on his face, as the team eagerly awaited his next words. "However, if the enemy envelopes themselves in lightning or is partly composed of electricity, your water spells could be their undoing. They would struggle to utilize their abilities without risking self-electrocution. Only the high-tier monsters, possessing robust lightning resistance or immunity, could withstand your onslaught." Aqua's brow furrowed as he considered Thorian's explanation. Is that truly how it works? Meanwhile, Forlun's attention was fixated on Ventus, an amused glint in his eyes. "Doesn't that mean you got it the hardest here?" "What do you mean?" Ventus countered. Forlun stroked his chin and grinned. "Well, if Aqua can just handle the weak monsters just fine, we will only need to deal with the high-tier ones. But since those guys have strong lightning resistance, your spells would be pretty useless." Realization dawned on Ventus as he grasped the issue Forlun was alluding to. Rather than dwell on the apparent disadvantage, he shrugged and huffed. "That's no issue for me. My most powerful skills are my wind ones, and they should work just fine." Thorian nodded approvingly at Ventus, seeing a reflection of his younger, more impulsive self in the ambitious kobold. "I had that same issue in the past. Fire dungeons are truly the worst matchup for fire magi. Even as one of the strongest fire archmagi, I couldn't deal with dungeons that a water grandmagus would be able to clear. Anyways, forget about that." Ventus waved his hand dismissively before turning his gaze back to Thorian. "King, where do we find this dungeon?" Thorian paused for a moment before responding. "We'll need to search within caves." "Caves?" Saxum raised an eyebrow, curiosity etched on his face. "So it's a cave dungeon?" "Not quite," Thorian clarified. The entrance is located within a cave, but the actual dungeon is quite different. Like the verdant labyrinth, we will be teleported inside once we locate it. With this new information, the group proceeded on their quest, venturing into every cave they encountered. They battled numerous monsters lurking within, gradually pushing deeper into the forest. Eventually, they came upon a cave that differed from the rest. From the outside, it appeared ordinary, but once they stepped inside, they could perceive an alternate source of light emanating from within. As they advanced further, the narrow passage opened up into a vast chamber. Bathed in an ethereal blue glow, the chamber's luminescence came from clusters of blue flowers dotting the area. "What are these?" Forlun voiced out, eyeing the electricity-buzzing flowers with curiosity. "These are pulse poppies," Thorian elucidated, his eyes reflecting his shock. "But the quantity here is staggering." "Why the surprise, King?" Ventus asked, furrowing his eyebrows. "Are they dangerous?" Feeling the weight of everyone's gaze upon him, Thorian shook his head. "No, it's not about danger. Pulse poppies are valuable resources, coveted by seasoned alchemists. They are ingredients in many significant recipes." "Ah, so they're treasures," Vigil chimed in. Thorian couldn't help but marvel at the spectacle before him. "If a merchant stumbled on this, they would have made a fortune in my past life." Pulse poppies featured in numerous alchemical recipes Thorian was aware of. Quite fortuitously, some of these recipes could also be the potential rewards from the dungeon they were about to explore. "So, what do we do now?" Ventus inquired. "Do we take them? Do we go to the dungeon first?" "We'll collect these first," Thorian ordered, a determined look in his eyes. "We're fortunate to have found the site intact. We can't risk venturing into the dungeon, only to return and find this place ravaged by some dumb beast." With Thorian's directive, everyone set about gathering the blue electric flowers. The task required precision, as each flower needed to be carefully uprooted rather than haphazardly plucked. Thorian ensured that his teammates understood the proper method of harvesting pulse poppies before allowing them to assist. He continued to supervise their efforts closely to prevent any wastage of these high-quality ingredients. So, the group began the meticulous process of gathering the pulse poppies. Given their lack of appropriate pouches, they had to resort to using their clothing pockets and cupping the flowers within their hands. Naturally, this method significantly limited the amount they could each collect. Consequently, multiple trips from the cave to the village became necessary. Throughout this time, Thorian stood guard in the cave. While his companions ran their errands, several Thunder Mashers attempted to invade the cave, only to be deterred by Thorian's spells. With his dual casting ability, he was now capable of unleashing the Wind Gust Fireball combo single-handedly, thereby enhancing his fire power without having to resort to the more mana-draining First Advancement spells. After about 90 minutes of this routine, the group finally managed to harvest all the pulse poppies from the cave chamber. At Thorian's behest, the flowers were stored within his own home. Finally, the group gathered around a large, dark blue gemstone that was lodged within the wall at the far end of the cave, pulsating with electric arcs. "Well then, it's finally time," Thorian commented. "I've been waiting for you to say that, King." Ventus immediately darted toward the gemstone, eager to plunge into the dungeon. Thorian, along with the rest of the group, joined the yellow kobold at the gemstone, just as a notification appeared before him. "Congratulations, you're the first to discover the medium-scale dungeon, the Thunderous Citadel. You will receive double the rewards and a higher chance for extra rewards if you clear it. Choose the difficulty layer you wish to enter. Choose the difficulty layer you wish to enter. Difficulty Power Recommendation. Layer I Party of 10 at Peak First Advancement. Layer 2 Party of 10 at Second Advancement. Layer 3 Party of 10 at Peak Second Advancement." A medium-scale dungeon, huh? I forgot about that detail. We're allowed to enter with 10 men? Forlun questioned, an eyebrow raised in surprise as he stared at the unseen screen. "Should we return to the village and gather more people?" "Yes, that would be prudent," Thorian agreed, nodding. "We could also bring our dire wolves. They'd surely appreciate the extra experience points." "Tammy would love that," Ventus said, a grin spreading across his face. "She was so upset when I told her to stay back at the village." Tammy? Saxum questioned, an eyebrow raised in confusion. Who's that? That's the name of my dire wolf, Ventus clarified. And what about you? What name did you give to your direwolf? Saxum shifted his gaze away from Ventus. I didn't realize we were supposed to name them. You're a heartless one, aren't you? Ventus admonished, shaking his head in disbelief. How can your direwolf be your companion without you naming them? That is basic courtesy. What courtesy you're talking about? Saxum retorted, clicking his tongue in annoyance. And you certainly talk a lot for someone who didn't even have a name until 2 days ago. Overlooking the brewing argument between the two, Thorian decided to take command. Let's go back to the village. We don't have time to waste. And so, Thorian and his team retraced their steps back to the village, eager to reunite with their direwolf allies. Harold, upon hearing their intent to venture into a dungeon, wore a grin that was impossible to miss. Even though he didn't voice it, his excitement was palpable. The 5 additional members recruited into the team were all from the original tribe. Kadar, Kryman, and Belaf proudly joined their leader, Ferlun. Ifrit was equally eager about the prospect of conquering a new dungeon. The last to join them was Mista, the priest from Forlun's group who had taken care of Kadar after his arm was lost. Ifrit's presence felt like a louder, more intense version of Nox. Her competitive streak clashed instantly with Ventus as they started placing bets and engaging in trivial competitions. Their direwolf companions, Tammy and Fong, were left dealing with their owners' combative spirits as they raced tirelessly from the outer village wall to the cave entrance. Thorian didn't take part in their antics, instead opting to guide Forlun's old squad who were less familiar with this part of the forest. He led them slowly, carefully towards the cave. Close to their destination, Thorian attempted to strike up a conversation with the typically silent Harold. How's your son faring? Is his recovery going well? He's hunting proficiently now, Harold replied. However, he hasn't yet found a suitable companion. It's a shame, as I had hoped he'd experience the wonder of these dungeons. Thorian absorbed Harold's words before responding with a nod. That is unfortunate. However, we shouldn't rush him. He'll find a companion soon enough, particularly as our numbers continue to grow. Are you planning to expand even more? Harold questioned, a flicker of curiosity apparent in his tone. To ensure the village's continued growth, expansion is necessary, Thorian clarified. If the opportunity arises, I intend to welcome more kobolds and kobloids. However, the most likely group to integrate seems to be the goblins, surprisingly. Goblins? Harold questioned, a curious eyebrow raised. How so? Upon the direwolf king's inquiry, Thorian elaborated on Brix's plan. The goblin's proposal had been percolating in his mind for a while now, and it had gradually become clear to Thorian that it offered the most straightforward path to enlarging Wolvendale village. Moreover, it would pave the way for various species to join his burgeoning kingdom, positioning him uniquely as the potential ruler of monsters. Having completed his explanation, the group finally arrived at the cave entrance. There, they found the 2 magi arguing fiercely, their direwolves panting heavily from the grueling race that Ventus and Ifrit had instigated. My boys really got pushed to their limits, Harold telepathically commented. Yet, for 2 proud direwolves to be exhausted after such a basic race, it's quite the embarrassment. They've given it their all. There's no shame in that. Thorian chuckled, hopping down from Harold's back and approaching the 2 debating magi. You really have a knack for cheating, Wind Boy, Ifrit accused, clicking her tongue in irritation. Ventus, in response, simply shook his head. Using your abilities to your advantage isn't cheating. It's called being smart. Being smart? Ifrit scoffed, tilting her head to one side. I really should have blasted you with my magma skill. That would have been a great use of my abilities to my advantage. You should have done so. Ventus shrugged nonchalantly, but I doubt you would have hit me. Observing Ventus's smug expression, Ifrit clenched her fists and marched towards him, ready to pick a fight. You insufferable little dash. Enough, Thorian interjected just in time. He turned to Ventus and admonished, quit antagonizing your teammate before a dungeon delve. It helps no one. With a mischievous yet apologetic expression, Ventus stuck out his tongue. Sorry about that, King. I'll tone it down. Satisfied with the response, Thorian nodded and then turned his attention to Ifrit. The magma girl was still glaring fiercely at the yellow kobold. Don't let his words ruffle you, Thorian advised Ifrit. If such provocations unsettle you, adversaries will exploit this weakness. Maintaining composure is crucial. I'm sorry, King. I understand, Ifrit responded, casting her gaze downward. Her clenched fist, however, still bore testament to her simmering irritation. Thorian chose not to comment further. Magi with a high affinity for fire were innately passionate beings. He himself had spent years refining his impulsive nature to become a suitable leader for his people. However, he knew this was merely a veneer, and his true fiery disposition could surface at any moment. Healthy competition never hurt anyone, Kadar chimed in, striding over to the duo with a hearty laugh. He placed a hand on Ifrit's shoulder, suggesting, why not turn this into a contest? The one who slays the most monsters gets first dibs on the rewards. A moment of silence followed, before Forlun pointed out, Kadar, that's not your decision to make. The king should decide the distribution of items. No, I appreciate the suggestion, Thorian interjected. Let's make it a contest for everyone. The one with the highest monster kill count gets first pick. The elite monster counts for 10 kills, and the dungeon guardian, 20. Herald, you keep count. Thorian's decree was met with surprised expressions, before Forlun erupted into laughter. You heard the king. But don't get your hopes up, I'll be the one racking up the kills. You're delusional, Forlun, Saxum shot back. Just because I haven't displayed all my skills, don't count me out. Will you be partaking in this contest as well, my king? Aqua inquired apprehensively. Thorian shook his head in negation. No, I will not participate. Hearing his answer, Aqua's lips curled into a triumphant smile. In that case, there's no other competitor I need to fear. Everyone's really fired up, Bellifer remarked, cracking his knuckles with a grin. I like it. Your kind find motivation in the strangest things, Harold commented, approaching Thorian. Though if it's a competition, I won't back down. I rather enjoy toying with young cubs trying to make their first kills. Thorian nearly laughed at Harold's veiled request. Not wishing to damage his new friend's pride, Thorian played along. I'm sure if you and the direwolves join in, the others will only get more competitive. Harold didn't reply, but his wide grin told Thorian all he needed to know. Playfully rolling his eyes, Thorian led the group into the cave, each of them mounted on their direwolves. Just as they had done in the verdant labyrinth, everyone held hands with one another to be registered as part of the same party. Then, Thorian selected the first layer difficulty. The gemstone emitted a blinding blue light accompanied by a thunderous roar that threatened to deafen Thorian's group. Everyone instinctively closed their eyes to shield them from the bright light, and a gust of wind indicated a drastic change in their surroundings. When the echoes of the thunderclap faded, Thorian's group found themselves on a broad, stark platform. The crisp forest air was replaced by the electrified, tangy atmosphere of a brewing storm. Overhead, tumultuous storm clouds billowed ominously, casting an eerie flickering light over the landscape. In front of them, a massive fortress towered. Constructed from a dark, bluish stone that seemed to absorb the surrounding light, its towers defiantly pierced the chaotic storm above. The entire structure throbbed with raw power as arcs of lightning traced across its surface, highlighting the intricate carvings etched into the walls. No matter how many times we do this, it never ceases to amaze me, Harold noted. To think such worlds exist, and we can access them so readily. Observing Harold marvel at the dungeon's existence brought a smile to Thorian's face. He remembered his own disbelief when he had first stepped into a dungeon 10 years prior. However, having now acclimated to the rules of this new world, he could only look upon his friend's astonishment with a sense of nostalgia, unable to share in the same sense of wonder. This is crazy! Ventus's exclamation drew Thorian's attention. The young kobold was perched on the platform's edge, peering down at the view below. From a distance, Thorian could make out a sea of clouds blanketing the horizon. We're on a floating island, Ventus exclaimed. Upon hearing Ventus's exclamation, Ifrit's curiosity was piqued. This is real. It's like a sea of clouds below us. She marveled. A hush fell upon the group as they wandered towards the edge to take in the view. The surreal vista left them in awe. I never thought I'd say this, but I think I'm afraid of heights, confessed Saxum, clutching his mouth before retreating from the precipice. After steadying himself, he turned to Thorian and asked, "What is below us?" "Death," Thorian replied nonchalantly. "No one who falls can be saved." Thorian's chilling words caused the kobolds to scramble away from the island's edge. Watching the scene, Thorian suppressed a chuckle. He shook his head, refocusing his gaze on the distant fortress. That was their target. "It seems you've all forgotten about the competition," Thorian observed. "Shall we commence with this dungeon clear?" At Thorian's command, Harold bolted toward the fortress. Inspired by their king, the direwolves fell in line, leaving their companions behind. "This isn't fair," protested Ventus. But as he began airing his grievances, the warriors surged past him, with Mista hot on their heels. While the warriors couldn't match the direwolves' speed, they easily outpaced Ventus and the rest of the Magi. Saxum and Aqua quickly followed the others, leaving Ventus in their wake. Grinding his teeth, the yellow kobold activated his wind gust spell, augmenting his speed as he dashed to catch up with the group. "Are you not joining them?" Thorian turned to address Vigil, who didn't seem particularly bothered about the race. Vigil flashed a smile before sauntering over to Thorian. "Well, this competition is not for me. I would rather take my time and observe." Thorian responded with a nod and a smile. "We'll do just that." With that, the duo leisurely strolled towards the fortress. Their surroundings on the floating island were bereft of the vibrant greenery and signs of life one might expect on a typical island. Instead, they were met with an expanse of the same dark bluish stone that comprised the mammoth fortress. Pulsing veins of brilliant electricity sporadically sprang to life across the island's surface, tracing an unpredictable path. These sporadic flares of light provided Thorian and Vigil with much-needed illumination to guide their way. As they neared the fortress entrance, Thorian noticed that the structures seamlessly blended with the island. It appeared to have sprouted from the ground itself, rooting deep within like a colossal tree. The distinction between the ground and the fortress was so subtle it was almost non-existent. The two structures seemed to be forged from the same dark blue stone. Observing Vigil scrutinizing their surroundings with a cautious gaze, Thorian chuckled. "It's unsettling, isn't it?" "Indeed, my king," the priest nodded. "This entire island feels like a dormant, sly creature. The fortress appears to be its massive maw." "In a way, it is," Thorian contemplated. "But this is just the first difficulty." "You needn't worry," Thorian reassured, dismissing Vigil's concerns. "This level is quite straightforward. I don't foresee any issues with them clearing it swiftly." With that, the pair entered the entrance hall. The grandeur of the place was marred by the aftermath of the recent battle. The remnants of blue hounds and the dying embers of lightning sprites lay scattered on the ground. "It seems you were correct, my king," Vigil remarked. "I've never seen them so dedicated to clearing a dungeon. They must truly want that first item pick." Thorian responded to Vigil's comment with a silent smile, leading the priest through the chaotic hall. Upon reaching its end, they stepped into a corridor. In stark contrast to the previous room, this area was pristine and elegantly adorned. A red carpet stretched its length, creating a striking contrast against the dark blue stone. Various vases and pieces of artwork graced the walls and corners. "At least they spared this place," Vigil remarked. "It's quite beautiful." "Indeed, it is," Thorian agreed, his eyes appreciating the displayed artwork. He paused momentarily on a piece portraying an old man with a long white beard and piercing blue eyes. The realism of the portrait was uncanny. It seemed as though the man's gaze pierced one's soul. After studying the old man's portrait, Thorian continued his walk alongside Vigil, moving towards the end of the corridor. The cacophony of sounds and shouts in the distance signaled their imminent arrival at their destination. Upon reaching the end of the corridor, the pair found themselves in a sprawling garden. Surprisingly, the ground was covered with grass, and there was actual dirt underfoot, What lay beneath the dirt, however, was a mystery best left unexplored. Thorian's group of kobolds was gathered within the garden, their attention fixed on something in the distance. Following their gaze, Thorian spotted a series of floating stone steps. Some were floating horizontally, others vertically, while a few took a diagonal course. Nimbly hopping from one step to the next were two kobolds, Ventus and Ifrit. Yes! 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 I'm almost there, Ventus cried out, landing on a step that was barely halfway through the course. The stone he landed on was on a diagonal trajectory, seemingly set to intersect with a vertically moving step on its downward course. That's the third time you've said that, Ifrit retorted from her position on the other side of the course. She was standing on a horizontal step, charting a straight course far to the right. The only other step in that direction was a diagonal one, apparently on a collision course with her current step. At Ifrit's retort, Ventus gritted his teeth and bellowed back, "This time will be the one." Holding his breath, he waited for the perfect moment when the vertical stone step was within jumping distance. However, just as he braced himself for the leap, the trajectory of the step he was on changed from diagonal to horizontal. Anticipating the imminent collision, Ventus took a leap of faith toward the vertical step. But to his dismay, just as he was about to reach it, that step also altered its direction to diagonal, causing Ventus to miss the jump entirely. Thump. Thump. The twin crashes occurred simultaneously. Ventus and Ifrit both missed their targets, their descent somewhat softened by the grass and dirt below. That makes it their fourth attempt, Forlun cackled with amusement. Those two must have bones of stone. I wouldn't want to fall that many times myself. While Forlun and the warriors were laughing and joking around, Thorian surveyed the group, realizing that their companions were absent. "Where are the dire wolves?" Thorian queried. "Have they already made it through?" "Indeed, they have," Saxum confirmed. "They just used their leap skill to skip 3 steps at a time. They reached the top platform before the steps started changing directions." "We can do the same," Forlun remarked confidently, flashing a triumphant grin before addressing his band of warriors. "All right, boys, why don't show those two how it's done?" Upon uttering those words, the group of warriors approached the floating steps. Their forms radiated a shimmering red aura before they sprinted into action. Leaping across the course, they covered more than a single step with each jump. The moment their feet touched a step, they quickly identified the next one to leap onto. In less than 10 seconds, the quartet reached the top. "Those cheaters." Thorian didn't need to look back to recognize Ventus's voice. "Ugh, I was so close this time." "Don't kid yourself," Saxum retorted, rolling his eyes. "You barely made it halfway. Why don't you give it a shot then, Mr. Genius Earth Magus?" Ventus fired back. "I'm sure you'll do exceptionally well." While the two bickered, Ifrit vented her frustrations to Mista. "Those steps are devious. They wait until the last moment to change direction." "I noticed," Mista replied, her expression empathetic as she healed Ifrit's battered bones. "Why don't you take a break before your next attempt? You might come up with a better strategy that way." "But those fools have already charged ahead," she grumbled. "If I wait too long, they'll slaughter everything up there and leave us with nothing but dust." As Ventus and Ifrit geared up for another attempt, Thorian's gaze drifted to the final member of their group, Aqua. The blue kobold's eyes were locked on the floating steps as he mumbled a series of numbers under his breath. "I've got it," Aqua announced confidently, a triumphant smile playing on his lips. "The pattern changes every 15 seconds. What did you figure out?" Ventus queried, an edge of irritation in his voice. Aqua responded with a chuckle and a nonchalant shrug. "It's pretty simple really, but it'll be easier if I just show you. Pay close attention, I'm only doing this once." Amidst the grumbling of the other kobolds, Aqua approached the beginning of the stone steps. Initially, he simply followed the method previously attempted by Ventus and Ifrit, merely standing on a step and allowing it to carry him along its trajectory. He did this for the first 2 steps, hopping from one to the next as soon as the first reached its endpoint. But when it came to the 3rd step, he didn't immediately leap. He waited as the step descended before the pattern abruptly shifted, transitioning it into a horizontal path. Adhering to this strategy, Aqua hopped across the first 2 steps and waited on the third as it returned to its starting position. He maintained this pattern until he reached the end of the platform. Thorian watched as Aqua solved the puzzle with effortless ease, a smile gracing his face. He glanced around at the rest of the team before speaking. We might as well follow suit. No sense in lingering here. Darn it. Ventus erupted in frustration. He only managed to solve it thanks to my previous attempts. If it wasn't for me, he wouldn't have understood the pattern. Observing the yellow kobold's outburst, Saxum let out an exasperated sigh. Yes. Don't worry, we all appreciate your sublime efforts. Witnessing the light-hearted squabble between the two, Ifrit sighed and gave Ventus a comforting pat on the back. Time to move on. This trial is over. I'm going to beat you in the next one. Like hell you will, Ventus retorted. The remaining kobolds traipsed after Thorian. With the pattern already demonstrated by Aqua, they faced little difficulty in duplicating his steps. Upon reaching the platform at the end of the floating staircase, Thorian couldn't suppress his awe at the wreckage strewn across the floor. What are these things? Vigil inquired, holding up a fragment of metal. It appeared to be part of a larger entity. These are remnants of a lightning sentinel, Thorian clarified. An invention crafted by the inhabitants of this land. It's nearly alive, but it lacks free will, obeying only the commands of its creators. Vigil's eyes grew wide at Thorian's explanation. He looked down at the piece of metal in his hand, noticing runes that pulsed with a faint blue light. Were the creators gods to have crafted such a thing? I don't care if they're gods or anything. I'm gonna go kill them. Ventus, itching to resume the competition, dashed past Vigil, rushing through the debris-laden platform. You're not gaining the upper hand this time, Ifrit retorted, immediately giving chase to Ventus. The platform they stood upon was vast and circular, covered in a dark blue material. Strewn across its surface were the remnants of the lightning sentinels, making it look as though a storm had recently wreaked havoc there. Where do you two think you're going? Thorian called out to the racing magi. They were in a circular area with no clear path forward and no visible exit. Noticing their predicament, Ventus and Ifrit retraced their steps, their faces reflecting a blend of embarrassment and bewilderment. Where did they disappear to? How? Ventus queried. Did they jump off the edge? Just follow my lead, Thorian replied, not feeling compelled to explain the labyrinthine structure of the dungeon. Thorian guided the group, his heavy footfalls echoing throughout the vast platform. The colossal monolith, a relic of forgotten wisdom, towered at the platform's core. The runes adorning its surface began to shimmer as they neared, casting an ethereal blue radiance over the platform. Exchanging glances of confusion, Ventus and Ifrit followed Thorian in silence, placing their trust in his cryptic guidance. As they stood before the monolith, the runes began to pulse more intensely. Their glow intensified, the energy surged faster, casting a mesmerizing display of fluid shadows that danced across their faces. What? Ventus began, his voice a whisper as he reached out, the heat of his fingertips inches away from the cold, pulsating stone. Thorian's hand on his arm stopped him. Don't touch, he warned, a simple, curt instruction. The indentation in the pedestal then sprang to life. It twisted and turned, forming an actual doorway of pulsating light. A veil of iridescence shimmered into existence, hinting at a swirling vortex beyond. Ifrit gasped. Is that a portal? It looks like the one where those monsters came rushing from. Her voice was a mix of awe and fear, her fiery eyes wide as she took in the sight. Thorian, ever the stoic guide, gave a slight nod. Yes, he said, his voice barely audible above the hum of the portal. Our way forward. Is it safe? Vigil asked, eyeing Thorian with uncertainty. Thorian shrugged before answering, yes, it is. The gods don't take pleasure in slaying us outright. That's not the nature of their game. Without another moment's hesitation, Thorian advanced into the portal. His vision momentarily darkened, filled with a swirling vortex of black, violet, and purple, while his ears were assaulted by a deafening white noise. Once the sensory overload diminished, the cacophony was replaced by the orchestrated chaos of battle. In front of him, dire wolves and warriors clashed against a gargantuan lightning creature, an elemental entity that wielded lightning bolts and electric shocks with commanding authority. Though the dire wolves and warriors skillfully dodged its strikes with their superior agility, their retaliations appeared ineffective against the lightning elemental. Their attacks only resulted in self-electrocution, leaving their hands and paws scorched. Aqua, with his water spells, was the only one landing successful hits. Even so, the lightning elemental merely recoiled momentarily from the water-based attacks before regenerating its form within seconds. Witnessing the ongoing chaos, Thorian decided to impart some advice to his companion. "Aim deeper," he suggested. Upon hearing Thorian's telepathic voice, Harold cast a puzzled glance back at him. "What do you mean? Do you see that metallic orb within its chest? That's its core. If you shatter it, you'll vanquish the elemental," Thorian conveyed telepathically. Processing Thorian's guidance, Harold activated his bestial form, his body morphing into a more formidable version of himself. With a resonant growl, he readied himself for a decisive strike. Displaying a dizzying speed, he charged the lightning elemental, utilizing his wind leap to enhance his assault. The glow from the direwolf king's paws was intensely bright as he prepared his rending spell, launching it at the elemental's core. Crack! With a final, electric wail, the lightning elemental gradually dissipated, leaving behind only its fractured core, which rolled listlessly on the ground. "Level up. Level up." "Well, that's one way to do it," Forlun guffawed, a deep laughter resonating from his belly as he approached Harold. "I'm jealous you claimed that kill, but I must admit, it was impressive. Truly amazing." Harold didn't join in Forlun's laughter, instead responding to the compliment with a graceful nod. "I'm impressed you noticed its core," Aqua interjected as he sauntered over. "I was attempting to hit it with my jet stream, but it kept evading somehow. It was very much aware of its own vulnerability." "It wasn't me who noticed it," Harold refuted with a grunt, turning his gaze to Thorian, who was standing apart from the group. "Thorian informed me of its weakness." Forlun looked surprised before following Harold's gaze and spotting Thorian. The sight of his king elicited a chuckle from him. He playfully protested, "My king, this isn't fair. You can't be helping your companion telepathically." Thorian reciprocated the chuckle. "My apologies. I simply didn't want to distract you with my voice amidst the battle. Oh, don't tell me you finished already?" Ventus's voice cut through Thorian's sentence. "I am seriously out of luck. How come I never get to join the fights?" Turning to Ventus, they saw the rest of the group materialize beside him one by one. Before long, all 10 kobolds of their party were reunited. There are still plenty of monsters to slay, and the Guardian awaits its downfall. Thorian comforted the disgruntled Ventus before shifting his attention back to Harold. "Are you still keeping track of everyone's kills?" Upon hearing Thorian's question, Harold flashed a victorious grin. "I am. And, unsurprisingly, I'm in the lead." "Not for long," Forlun retorted. "The Guardian's kill will be mine, and that would put me above you in points." "You all can keep daydreaming," Aqua interjected. "I was unfortunate to miss this elite monster's core with my spell, but it won't be the same with the Guardian. I will be the one to kill it." Witnessing the trio confidently laying claim to victory in the competition, Ventus ground his teeth and turned to Ifrit and Saxum. "These guys are taking us lightly, acting as if they've already won. We can't let them have another kill." "As long as there are no more stairs, I'm not worried," Ifrit replied, cracking her knuckles with a confident grin. "I'll blast those monsters away before they even get a chance to lay a finger on them." Seeing his companions riled up, Saxum merely shrugged. "You two can try your hardest. Harold and Forlun are too far ahead in points for me to catch up. I knew you were a—" Just as Ventus was about to berate Saxum, Thorian tapped him on the shoulder. "Stop wasting time, the others are already on the move." Heeding Thorian's reminder, the last group turned to see the dire wolves and warrior kobolds already navigating their way out of the hall through a colossal gate and into a grand corridor. As soon as they all exited, the eyes of the giant statues adorning the sides of the corridor ignited with light. The statues, hewn from cold stone, came alive with a grating, mechanical rumble. Each bore an alien, unchanging expression that was devoid of emotion. An armory of archaic weaponry was held in their grasp, some cradling spears, others brandishing swords, and yet more gripping massive maces. On the periphery of the unfolding scene, Thorian watched with intense curiosity as his comrades readied themselves for the oncoming onslaught. However, doubt did not cloud his thoughts. He held faith in their ability to overcome the formidable adversaries. Vigil and Mista, like a pair of celestial smiths, worked in tandem to layer their comrades with blessings, multiplying their already monstrous capabilities exponentially. To the stone Goliaths, their assailants moved with the celerity of wolves, appearing like ghostly blurs against the backdrop of the battlefield. Unleashed upon the statues, the dire wolves and kobold warriors swiftly overwhelmed their monolithic foes with a devastating fusion of speed and brute force. Ventus and Ifrit, too, played their lethal symphony. Ventus, the yellow kobold, dispatched two of the stone behemoths with his gale slash, cleaving through them as if they were spun from gossamer. Ifrit, the fiery maiden, entered the melee fray, brandishing her lava whip like a seasoned warrior. Each strike from her whip, crackling with incandescent energy, melted the cobalt statues as though they were mere wax figures. In contrast to the melee maelstrom, Aqua stood apart, employing his deadliest spell, the triple jet stream, with surgical precision. Despite being unable to utilize a diverse array of spells in this particular situation, his solitary water spell proved more than sufficient, continuously decimating any adversary foolish enough to cross his path. Amidst the tempest of the battle that raged around him, Thorian's mind began to wander into the shadowy recesses of his memory. His brow furrowed in deep concentration, wrestling with elusive fragments of memories that stubbornly refused to surface. Damn it, why can't I remember? He was convinced that there was something unique about this place. From the outset of their dungeon expedition, an instinctive sensation had hinted at the significance of the location. The further he ventured into its depths, the more palpable this feeling grew. Regardless of his strenuous mental exertions, the elusive memory remained stubbornly shrouded in a haze. It was a will-o'-the-wisp that grew ever more ethereal the harder he pursued it. The cacophony of the battlefield yanked Thorian from his introspective maze, back to the harsh reality of the present. Only a single stone statue remained. It towered above the fallen, brandishing a massive flail that crackled with violent electricity. But despite its impressive stature and weapon, it was no swifter than its fallen brethren. Harold swiftly laid it low with a devastating dire rend. The massive statue of stone crumbled, joining its fallen comrades in defeat. Level up. Thorian's lips curled into a satisfied smile as he looked at the new notifications. This latest wave of level-ups was a significant part of the thrill of progressing his class, and the double experience reward was the perfect finishing touch. Securing such an abundance of first clear bonuses had been a windfall, both for him and his team. With the once animate statues now reduced to inert rubble, Thorian's group resumed their journey, trekking through the labyrinthine corridor. But despite the camaraderie and the thrill of exploration, Thorian's mind was held captive by the elusive memory. It danced tantalizingly at the edges of his consciousness, temptingly close yet frustratingly out of reach. "My king, is everything all right?" Vigil's voice sliced through Thorian's musing, pulling him back to reality. "You seem troubled." "No, it's nothing," Thorian reassured him, shaking off his concerns. Yet, as he turned to rejoin his group, his eyes snagged on a peculiar detail, a slender line that traversed the wall's height. His gaze trailed the anomaly, observing it extend beyond the wall, bisecting the floor and ceiling alike. It appeared to demarcate the end of one section, suggesting an unseen boundary within the stone structure. "Oh, I remember now." Thorian's initial astonishment gradually settled into a knowing grin as the memory suddenly fell into alignment like the intricate pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. "Halt," he commanded, his voice arresting the forward momentum of the group. "Do not venture further." Ferlin, puzzled by the abrupt instruction, nonetheless complied. He retreated, leading the rest of the group back to Thorian. Why have we stopped? Are we stopping the competition? Ventus' eyes widened in dismay. What? His gaze darted to Thorian, a pleading look etched onto his face. We're not abandoning the competition, are we? Stop with your useless speculations, Thorian reprimanded, surveying the rumor mill churning before him. This is not about the competition. Rather, I wish to share my understanding of this part of the dungeon. Without it, you could spend countless hours here with nothing to show for it. Thorian's cryptic words only served to stir a whirlpool of queries amongst his companions. Their gazes, brimming with curiosity, were keenly fixed on him. Seizing their rapt attention, he gestured towards the slender line that snaked across the floor. This line signifies the boundary between this section of the dungeon and the next, Thorian began. This part of the dungeon is a labyrinthine series of corridors, riddled with dead ends, roving monsters, and traps. Yet, its complexity doesn't stop there. The maze is divided into multiple sections, demarcated by this line, and these sections shuffle around after a fixed period. A hushed silence fell over Thorian's men as they absorbed his explanation. It was Aqua who broke the quiet, querying, "Is there a pattern to this shifting? If there is, we could couple it with some exploration to grasp the layout of the maze and devise a strategy to find the exit." Upon hearing Aqua voice his thoughts aloud, Thorian offered a nod of approval, his smile proud. "Your reasoning is sound, but it's unnecessary in this case, for I already know the way out. Our course of action is simple. We wait for a section to shift, take a right turn, wait for the next shift, and then repeat. After executing this 5 times, we should arrive at the exit without trouble." His explanation was met with stunned silence as everyone absorbed the simplicity of his solution. Ventus broke the silence, exclaiming, "Oh, that's it? That's easy then. This part of the dungeon is going to be a joke." Forlun clicked his tongue at Ventus's antics. Talk about easy when you start racking up kills. At this point, you're never going to catch up. As the rest of the group engaged in the playful banter, Vigil maintained his reverent gaze on Thorian. "My king, your knowledge never ceases to amaze me. Ulvaski has truly blessed us in allowing us to serve under your leadership." Thorian simply shrugged in response. "What good is my knowledge if I do not share it? My deepest desire is for those who serve me, those who stand by my side, to lead fulfilling lives and possess the strength and intellect to protect what they cherish." Thorian cast an amused glance at Ventus and Forlun locked in their jovial squabble, a chuckle escaping his lips. Some certainly possessed the former, but may be found wanting in the latter. As moments ticked by, the raid party lapsed into casual banter, forming huddles of jovial camaraderie. Suddenly, a low rumble, seemingly originating from a great distance, began to crescendo into a deafening thunderclap that reverberated through them all. As the residual ringing in Thorian's ears gradually dissipated, he could discern the grating noise of stone grinding against stone. The corridor before them began to transform, shifting its configuration. When the movement finally subsided, they found themselves at a crossroads, one path veering to the right, the other to the left. Hearing it explained is one thing, but seeing it is another, Forlun cackled, already moving towards the right passage. "I'm sure there are monsters waiting for us there. We should move now." Just as the Moon Kobold prepared to rush forward along with the rest of the group, Thorian stepped up to the fore, halting their advance. "Yes, you should proceed. But allow me to clarify one thing first." His gaze swept across the assembled ranks of kobolds and direwolves before he gestured backward with his thumb. "All of you will venture to the right. I, however, will be taking the left." I could elaborate on the reasons, but the crux of the matter is that the place I'm headed to is a solitary endeavor. By the time I conclude my business there, you should already be engaged in battle with the Guardian, if not having defeated it already. His unexpected announcement stirred murmurs amongst the group. Harold, massive in his form, stepped forward, a note of concern in his voice. "Will you be all right?" Thorian offered a reassuring smile at his comrade's concern. "Worry not. I am a cautious man. You have heard your king." Harold turned to the rest of the kobolds and his direwolf companions. "We should trust his judgment and proceed according to his orders." With that, Harold strode past Thorian, the rest of the dire wolves close on his heels. Forlun's band of warriors followed suit, eager not to be left behind, and the rest of the group gradually fell into step behind them. "Good luck, King." Ventus started forward to give Thorian a supportive pat on the shoulder before joining the retreating group. Vigil, the last to depart, offered Thorian a respectful bow. "May fortune favor you, my king, in whatever quest you undertake." Thorian responded with a nod and a smile. "And I wish you luck as well, my friend." And so, the group carried on their chosen path to the right, while Thorian ventured leftward. The labyrinth of corridors posed no challenge for him. He was not only familiar with the layout, but his robust stats and abilities allowed him to disregard most of the monsters and traps that were strewn in his path. The only caution he had to exercise was in avoiding certain tiles made of blue stone. Their hue was a slight shade lighter than the regular ones, but if he were to mistakenly tread on them, he would be struck by a bolt of lightning. Thorian adhered to a strategy that was the mirror opposite of what he'd advised his group to follow. He would bide his time until a section shifted before venturing along the farthest left passage. After about 15 minutes of navigating the maze and combating monsters, he found himself facing what appeared to be a dead end. However, a faint line separated a small cubicle-like section at the far end. It was there that Thorian positioned himself, just beyond the line. A few moments later, the sections began their customary shift, the looming blue wall rapidly advancing in front of Thorian. When the shifting ceased, he found himself standing before a narrow corridor, a pedestal situated at its far end. This pedestal bore a striking resemblance to the one they had used on the platform outside the building, save for a sizable handprint carved into its center. With little ado, Thorian advanced towards the pedestal and pressed his hand against the imprinted shape. "Congratulations! You have discovered the room of the hidden boss, the undead mage Sahar. Do you wish to enter?" "Yes, I wish." Once teleported, Thorian found himself immersed in the subtle glow of a dimly lit chamber. Its only sources of illumination were twin lamps suspended from the ceiling, each housing a controlled and persistent electrical discharge. They cast a sapphire glow, enveloping the room's woodwork with an ethereal radiance. The space bore more resemblance to a grand library than a traditional dwelling. A labyrinth of towering shelves filled every conceivable space, a testament to the room's intellectual dominance. They were laden with heavy, leather-bound volumes and tightly wound scrolls, a trove of knowledge hidden in the semi-darkness. The gloomy lighting made it impossible for Thorian to discern the writings clearly, but one thing was apparent: the script was unlike any he had encountered before. Navigating the intricate maze of shelves, Thorian spotted a robed figure seated at a desk. The man's quill darted across a scroll in fluid strokes, absorbed in his task. Despite the protesting creaks of the wooden floor announcing Thorian's approach, the figure remained oblivious, engrossed in his work. "It's been a while since I haven't seen you, Sahar." Opting against an immediate assault, Thorian leaned against a shelf, his muscular back pressing into the worn wood. He scrutinized the man, tracing the rhythmic dance of the quill over the aged parchment. Upon closer inspection, Thorian realized a grotesque truth: the hand guiding the pen was devoid of any flesh. It was a mere skeletal structure. Minutes passed before the man ceased his writing, shoving the scrolls to one side. As he rose to his full height, Thorian caught sight of his horrifying form. The man was not a man at all. He was an animated skeletal being, an undead. A monster entering this lair? "The gods didn't forewarn me of such an occurrence," Sahar commented, a note of intrigue lacing his words. Despite the lack of facial flesh, the tone of Sahar's voice allowed Thorian to infer the expression he might have worn had he been alive. "And why do you refrain from attacking, Kobold?" the robed undead jibed as he ambled towards Thorian. "By now, you must grasp the rules of the game. Slay me, and you shall gain power unparalleled in your race's history. You would ascend as the deity of all kobolds across the myriad realms." Thorian listened to Sahar's audacious proposition, barely resisting the urge to roll his eyes. "Killing you? An archmagus? Give me a break." Noting Thorian's silence, Sahar responded with a surprised chuckle. Intriguing. You've chosen not to kill me? Then what brings you to this place? He queried. I have come to attempt the sacred trial, Thorian retorted, maintaining his stoic demeanor. Are you to be my guide, as per tradition? It seems like this is not your first time, Sahar observed, lapsing into a brief silence. However, this is but the first layer. Interesting. After a moment of quiet consideration, the robed spectre nodded. Very well, I shall fulfill my role as your guide. Come with me. Thorian's face broke into a rare smile, trailing after Sahar as they plunged back into the warren of book-laden shelves. Arriving at a particular shelf, the undead master extracted a book, triggering a hidden mechanism. The entire construct groaned and shifted, revealing a shimmering wall of blue stone behind the wooden framework. Once the movement ceased, an aperture opened, revealing a descending staircase, bathed in the same ethereal blue light that filled the room they were in. Without a word, Sahar proceeded down the steps. Thorian followed suit, and they navigated the staircase in mutual silence for several minutes before reaching its base. Shadowing the undead mage, Thorian emerged into an expansive arena. The structure echoed the Colosseums Thorian had seen in the capital. Its heart was a broad expanse intended for combat, encircled by seating stands hewn from massive, dark blue stones. They were devoid of spectators, their monochrome hue appearing even more striking in the absence of a crowd. Forgive the lack of aesthetics, Sahar commented, intuiting Thorian's thoughts. The materials to construct a floating island are few, and there simply isn't sufficient wood to furnish all these stands. At least, not anymore. The supplies ran out? Thorian queried, feigning curiosity. Sahar turned his skull towards Thorian, his face incapable of expression. It's an old tale. I doubt it would captivate you, he responded. The skeletal mage then stepped aside, gesturing Thorian towards the arena's heart. Shall we start your sacred trial as per your request? Immediately, Thorian agreed, nodding before following Sahar's direction and making his way towards the center of the arena. Your trial is straightforward. You must confront and vanquish the Thunderbird, Sahar elucidated. If you succeed, you will gain 3 rewards tailored to your needs. However, if you fail, that would mean you have died. Simple rules indeed, Thorian responded. Let's get started then. In acknowledgement, Sahar transported himself to the stands, conjuring a magical circle hovering above his skeletal hand. Simultaneously, a larger, more potent circle of magic spun into existence before Thorian on the ground. The space within the circle swiftly darkened to an impenetrable black, from which a gargantuan blue bird emerged, its shriek piercing the silence. The instant the Thunderbird materialized, Thorian retaliated with his first spell. The surrounding air bristled with a biting chill as a volley of tiny frost orbs pelted the colossal avian. Its electric wings spasmed in distress as it shrieked in response to the onslaught. Unwilling to allow the beast any opportunity to demonstrate its abilities, Thorian promptly followed up his initial spell with a dust devil. The gritty vortex scooped up the formidable bird, filling its whirling confines with dirt and debris. Yet, even within the swirling dust devil, the Thunderbird managed to conjure a spell in blind fury. A bolt of electricity formed at the tip of its beak, a signal of the impending devastating attack. Recognizing that he had a narrow window to evade the lightning-speed strike, Thorian rapidly summoned 2 protective spells in succession. Sturdy, entangling roots sprouted from the ground, enveloping him in a wooden dome. In tandem, he manifested a molten shield in front of him. Before Thorian could even perceive the peal of thunder, a bolt of lightning penetrated his wooden dome and struck his molten shield, sending him staggering backward. The concussive shockwave from the lightning and the resonating impact against his shield all but deafened him. Gazing through the settling debris and dust, Thorian observed that the Thunderbird had narrowly extricated itself from his dust devil's grip. The creature bore a smug expression, presuming it now held the upper hand. Thorian's eyes frosted over at the sight of the beast's triumphant visage. With a forceful swipe of his hand, he summoned one of his most potent spells, Wind Tornado. The air around the Thunderbird abruptly shifted direction. Taking in its surroundings, the avian quickly realized the severity of its predicament. The scale of this new spell far exceeded that of the previous dust devil that had already caused it considerable distress. Grasping the grave danger it faced, the Thunderbird issued a desperate squawk, attempting to flee from the rapidly expanding danger zone. Regrettably for it, escape was futile. The winds accelerated to a blistering pace, morphing into a colossal vortex that stripped the creature of all bodily control. As the wind tornado firmly ensnared the Thunderbird within its metaphorical claws, Thorian sealed the beast's fate. Fire Pillar. Flames roared, engulfing half the arena as a seething tornado of fire swallowed the Thunderbird whole. The giant blue creature lacked even a moment to shriek in agony or writhe in despair as the infernal conflagration incinerated it entirely. Even Thorian, at a considerable distance and bearing elemental resistance, found himself forced back by the blazing gusts and the intensity of the heat. He hastily retreated further from the fiery vortex upon noticing the tips of his fur singeing from the scorching heat. Congratulations! You have slain the First Layer's hidden boss, Thunderbird. Level up! Level up! Level up!